Good morning. We'll call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Montana Board of Public Education. Today is Friday, January 16th, and we are meeting at the newly renovated Montana Historical Society's Heritage Center. Beautiful building, beautiful facility, and we thank the staff for all of their work in accommodating us here today. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chris, will you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Slinger.
Here.
Julia Maxwell. Hannah Neeskens. Madeline Quinlan. Renee Rasmussen.
Here.
Lisa Schmidt.
Here.
Chair Tharp.
Here.
Lydia Comstock. Commissioner Christian's office. Governor Jean Forte's office. Superintendent Hedlund's office.
And we note that Dr. McLean is joining us via Zoom. The Board of Public Education encourages the public to participate in board discussions. Persons who wish to participate should sign the public comment sign-in sheet and identify themselves to the board chair or executive director prior to the board's consideration of the matter in which the persons are concerned. Anyone wishing to participate in board discussions will be recognized by the chair in keeping with normal board parliamentary procedure. We discourage public comment on personnel matters and ask that you discuss these issues in private with the board chair. The Board of Public Education is a professional development unit provider. Attending a Board of Public Education meeting may qualify you to receive professional development units. Please complete the necessary information on the sign-in sheet if you are applying for professional development units. At this time, we welcome any visitors who would like to introduce themselves or be acknowledged, either in the room or online. All right, seeing none, we will proceed with our agenda. We are on item number 21. And for those of you following along in your board packet, this is on page 322. And I will turn, the next two items are under the Charter School Committee, and I will hand things over to Charter School Committee Chair, Dr. Slinger.
I'm sure people would really are sad they couldn't hear my voice. Yes, I'll try and speak up. Sorry about that. The item 21 update on Charter Community Choice Schools Commission. I see Kathy coming online. Kathy, it's good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Slinger and members of the board. I have a report for you today on updates from the Community Choice Schools Commission. We'll talk a little bit about where we are with program and policy development. A new member has joined the commission, update on some public relations, and our next meeting. So yeah, I'd just like to start and give you some updates on where the commission is in terms of building out the law. So at our last meeting, actually, let me start with what we're working on right now. Currently, we have drafts of the renewal and revocation process, early indicators of distress and corrective action framework, and potential closure procedures. So that's kind of the last piece and everything that we need to do to build out the law for authorizing schools. And all of those procedures will be reviewed at our meeting in February and hopefully be made final. So that is exciting. And yeah, at our December meeting, the commission did finalize some policies, and I wanted to take a look at a few of those with you today. So we have fully built out the new potential school application cycle, and we have all of the annual report templates built out. So in your packet, there are a few of the final documents and policies that I'd just like to share with you. So first off, on page 323, you'll see the commission's core values. So this document here, we actually finalized at our advance last October. And I wanted to share this with you today because I think it really frames out the intent and integrity of the law and how the commission intends to hold it to its integrity. So first off, at the top of the page there, you see the vision for the Community Choice Schools Commission, which is to develop the full education potential of each student by building a diverse and dynamic public education landscape. So as you'll probably notice in there and in our promise, we have referred to the Montana Constitution in the full education potential of every student, and being that community choice schools contribute to that system of public education. And our guiding principles, I will tell you, this was definitely a point of discussion and a lot of clarification and wordsmithing. But we had excellent contributions for everyone on the commission. So it really felt like a great collaborative project. Everyone was able to share their opinions and values, and making sure that these values were not only the values of the current commission, but that they would continue to guide any future commission as new members join on. So my personal favorite there at the top is students first always. And I think that is the guiding principle of the commission. Stewards of the public trust, very important. Authorizing for systems change. Excellence is the expectation. Community-centered innovation is what we're looking for. And then courage and clarity in decision making, as you know, it may come to times when we have to say no. So not an easy process, but I really feel like these values do stress the intent and integrity of the law, and the commission will continue to come back to these. They are leading in several of the policies and documents that you see. So we really hold these values as just a strong foundation for the commission. So very pleased to have that work done, and I think it really holds us together as a group and keeps our intent focused. The next document I want to share with you is just an overview of our application process. So we did quite a bit of work in the last few months here to really ensure that during the application process, we're developing a relationship with the folks that are bringing their school applications to the commission. So, you know, it's not just a receipt of a paper application, but we have touch points with the schools prior to that. So in that green pre-application process there at the top, you'll notice informational sessions. So, you know, even before, months before an application would be submitted, we're hosting application sessions to educate potential founders about, you know, what is a community choice school? What does this application process look like? What is the intent and the values of the commission? And then the next piece there would be a notice of intent. So simply just notifying the commission that a school does intend to apply so that the commission can prepare, you know, for a proper application cycle, knowing how many applications they have coming in. And then the final piece before they submit their written application is a pitch meeting. And this would just be a quick meeting over Zoom where the potential applicants or the potential founders would have an opportunity to share a bit about their model with the commission, and kind of that pitch that will be used to recruit students and families, to recruit teachers, basically, you know, kind of getting some practice for that and feedback from the commission as well. And then the next piece there is the written application process. And we've looked at that as kind of 3 phases. So it's the written application is phase 1. Phase 2 would be a public forum. So the commission probably would be just a committee of the commission, the application review committee, going to the actual community where the school intends to open and having the founders pitch their model there, but also having members of the community come and provide input and feedback. And then the final piece is the applicant interview. So really looking at making sure, you know, we're using the time there to create a comprehensive process and making sure that the commission is getting a full understanding of the cycle of the application. And then, of course, deliberation and moving into contracting for the schools that do get approved. So that is the new application process. And then the next piece I wanted to share with you in the packet, which begins, I believe, on page 325. One of the statutory requirements is that the commission reports out annually to the Board of Public Education and to the Education Interim Committee and the public as to the progress of community choice schools in their portfolio. So on page 325 there, you see the statutory requirements for that report. And I've bolded the items that, really indicate what needs to be included in that report. So what we've done in the next pages there is actually put a copy of the annual report in there for you for your review. And I will say that everything from statute is included in there. We do have the opportunity to add more, and the commission would be interested in feedback from the Board of Public Education if you do want to see more information in there. We'll also be reviewing this with the Interim Education Committee at their meeting in March. But I'll just run through the contents quickly. You've got it all in front of you there, but it starts with just a letter from the commission chair highlighting accomplishments and work to be completed. Outlines who the commission members are. You'll see our core values next. And then the next page is basically just an overview of kind of the number of schools, the location, what year they're in, what different models they have. So very just high level information there about the commission's portfolio of schools. And then we get into philanthropy and partnerships that might be developed, and both on the school level and the commission level. So those are kind of additions to what's in statute. And then the next piece here gets into what is actually required in statute. So a performance summary from each school, including their everything that's in their performance framework. So academic, operational, and financial measures. The next section, section 4, is a community choice schools comparison with resident district schools. So, the intent here is, are community choice schools offering, more and better than what the students might be getting in the traditional schools. So I will say this is going to be a challenge because the law does allow community choice schools to select their own assessment. So they may not potentially use the MAST assessment. So having an apples to apples comparison could be, well, it will be a challenge if the schools select not to administer the MAST assessment. So we'll tackle that as it comes. We may, we'll tackle that as it comes. And then section 5 is the commission's assessment of successes, challenges, and areas of improvement for the intent of the law. So this gives the commission an opportunity to give some feedback to the Education Interim Committee as to, how is the intent of the law actually proceeding in implementation. And there's different sections there as far as funding, funding for schools, funding for the commission and other authorizers, community choice schools movement overall, and then any revisions to policy. So I guess Chair Slinger, tell me which would be the best way to proceed here. So this is kind of newly adopted by the commission. Does the BPE want to give McCall some feedback on that, or how would you feel best to proceed as far as feedback on that report, the contents or the template?
Well, I appreciate the template. I would ask board members if they have any comments, suggestions, concerns. So Board Member Rasmussen.
Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate the clarity of the layout, and I hope that would carry over to the clarity in the report, layout of the report, so we could follow them from school to school. So I wanted to say that first. I'd also like to ask a question. I don't know who can answer this. I don't know if you can. Well, you were talking about section 4, the performance comparison. Would community choice schools, would these be also subject to taking NAEP?
So yes, Chair Slinger and Member Rasmussen, NAEP is a national requirement. As long as it is a national requirement, the community choice schools would be held to administering it. Yeah, so
that wouldn't be every year, but yeah.
Right. Yep. So community choice schools are held to all federal law.
Okay. So that would be that would at least be a possibility periodically.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Board Member Quinlan.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. I also want to commend you for the layout here. It looks great and easy to understand. I just wanted to suggest, if you haven't done this already, have you done a little bit of research on handling personally identifiable information of students and reporting out? We have some practices in the state where we don't report groups smaller than a certain size. Used to be 10. I don't know what it is now, 5. So I just would encourage that. There's people at at the Office of Public Instruction who know quite a bit about all this. So that would be a good place to start.
Yes, Chair Slinger and Member Quinlan, I appreciate that notice there. And yes, the commission has discussed that as well. And yeah, with the intent of respecting privacy.
Board Member Schmidt.
Thank you. I just have a clarification on the application process.
Mhm.
Are you submit written applications and then you have some public forums and then you have interviews, and then will the applicants have a chance to revise their application after the public forums and the interviews?
Chair Slinger and Member Schmidt, that is a great question. So the commission has not discussed that at this point of integrating that in there. I think the intent would be that any gaps that, might be noticed would be addressed in that applicant interview.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Any other board members have questions or clarifications necessary? Any from staff? No, thank you. Kathy, thanks for all the hard work. I mean, it's pretty obvious you.
Yes, Chair Slinger, I appreciate that. Yes, we're making good progress. It's exciting. Of course, we're still waiting on full access to the law, but in the meantime, we sure are taking care to ensure that the intent of the law is followed through in all of the policies and procedures. So, and I appreciate the feedback from members. I do have a few more updates and then I will wrap up here. So
One second, Kathy. It looks like
Sure.
Board Member Rasmussen has another question.
Just
Great.
one question. I know it's been a long time since the laws passed and all that kind of thing. Do you have, just anecdotally, do you have groups that are interested that you have heard of? Okay, that's all I want to know.
yes, Chair Slinger and Member Rasmussen, and I'll talk about a couple of those in just a minute here. So thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Kathy. Please proceed. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So the commission welcomed a new member for our December meeting. Barbara Forrester Frank is a new appointee by the House Minority Leader. She's filling a term that was vacated, so her term does end in August 2026, and we'll look for either a renewal or a new appointment at that point. But Barbara is a longtime Montana educator. As some of you may recognize her name, she's currently serving as the Director of Student Services for Missoula County Schools. So very pleased to have her on the board. And to your question, Member Rasmussen, in terms of potential school founders. So I actually just held a meeting last week with a couple founders and a gentleman that I was introduced to in a Macy meeting who has a tribal framework for pedagogy and assessment. So he's had great success in replicating this model with tribal students and had a chance to talk to 2 founders that we have out there with models that are intended to serve in our tribal communities. So it was a great meeting. I really appreciate his guidance for them in taking how students learn and developing their model around that. So he had some good feedback for them and provided his framework and access to his services in the future and helping them build out their models. So and then in addition to those 2, I know that they are working on their application process, and I think we have maybe 3 or 4 others that are also at least exploring getting boards formulated and finding potential school leaders. So there's definitely interest out there, and it's exciting to start, just learning about those models as the commission is getting more established and the word is getting out. So yeah, finally, I just want to wrap up our next meeting is February 18th. That will be held via Zoom. As always, we welcome participation from any board members and the public. At that meeting, we have some policy work to go over. So we'll be looking at our renewal process for schools, schools potentially moving into corrective action or kind of early indicators of distress that would maybe lead to corrective action. We have policies together for that, and then also school closure policies to review. And in addition, we have a presentation from a consultant group that we've been working with around our assessment policy. So as I mentioned earlier, community choice schools are able to choose their own assessment. So this group has worked to identify a few valid, reliable assessments that the commission will recommend. And then in addition to that, they've also put together some criteria for the commission to use if a school proposes using an assessment that wouldn't be on that list, so we can ensure that it is valid and reliable measure. So that is all I have. I appreciate your questions and feedback on the reports today. And yeah, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Does any board member have any questions at this time? Seeing none, I just want to thank you very much. Nice, thorough report. We appreciate all the work and progress you and the commission are making. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Board members will now move on to item number 22, action on the resolutions to either approve or deny public charter schools. Executive Director Flynn, I'm assuming you have some resolutions drafted.
Mr. Chair, I do have the resolutions drafted. I can share those on my screen at your request. I guess I'd just like some direction from you on how you want to proceed and which one you want me to share first.
I think we should share the approved one. I would love for you to share that on the screen, then have board members. I'll just ask you to confirm this is what we discussed yesterday. And then with that, I'll ask Chairman Tharp if I can make a motion.
So, Mr. Chair, what you're seeing on the screen is the resolution of the Board of Public Ed to approve the Stevensville Health Sciences Academy and Park Pathways School as recommended by the Board Charter School Committee. And this is the resolution that we have used. It will be resolved by the Montana Board of Public Education on January 16, 2026 after action today.
Board members, do you confirm that this is the results that we talked about during the work session yesterday?
Yes.
I see it. Thank you. I see a lot of nodding heads. Thank you for the verbal. Mr. Chair, I would ask if I can make a motion.
Please do.
I move to approve the resolution to approve the applications for public charter schools.
You've heard the motion to approve the resolution on the screen. Is there a second? It's seconded. Board member discussion.
I would just say, Mr. Chair, that I'm grateful for all the board members and hard work on looking at this. Incredibly grateful also for the school districts and the work they put in on these and the diligence and of the process of review and the discussion around this. So thank you.
Board member Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would also like to ask that we would ask our director if she would talk to the other schools that may not have listened in yesterday to make sure that they understand some of the reasoning of why we had denials.
Any of the board member discussion? Public comment? Go ahead.
Good morning. Chair Tharp, members of the board, Director Flynn, Chad Johnson, JOHNSON with Livingston Public Schools. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I did listen in yesterday, and I just wanted to thank this group here that conversation was tremendous. very reflective. I came this morning on this 2-hour drive ready for a full response to every question that you have on that. Luckily, I haven't been advised by my team that the less I say, the better it is. So I wanted to thank you. I understand that you do have the challenge early on with little to no guidance on what that looks like. I have followed this group and this process for 2.5 years now. Understand that evolves, it changes. You are going with that at the same time, and I just truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Something I meant to tell Kathy earlier is that we're a little bit envious of her commission and their work in that they have been able to conduct lots of professional development and learning prior to them going through the process, whereas we've had to figure it out on our way as we're in the middle of the process. But thank you. Other public comment? Is there any public comment online? If anybody's online wishes to speak, please raise your hand via the Zoomify. All right, seeing none, our motion is to approve the resolution on the screen, which is to approve granting public charter schools to Stevensville Health Sciences Academy and Park Pathway School. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Tharp. So Director Flynn, if you could put the denial resolution up, we can look at that and proceed.
So, Mr. Chair, what you're seeing here is a tad different. The denial resolution does require that the Board of Public Ed give a rationale for the denial of each of the charters that you choose to deny. So here, it does say that the board denies the following charter schools for the following reasons. So you'll see that I have listed here each of the charter schools that were discussed yesterday as a recommendation from the board charter school committee, Custer County Class Academy, Stevensville Alternative Steps Charter School, Lions Path Academy, SOAR Academy, and Columbia Falls Trade Academy. And you'll see for each one of these, the rationale for the denial is solely based off of the criteria that was in the packet. And for each one of those, the denial, like I said, is from the criteria from that list.
Yeah, Member Quinlan.
Great. The school will create an innovative public charter school.
Thank you, Member Quinlan. Thank you.
I'm disappointed that Renee didn't find that.
Renee. Thank you. I'll give this one more gander before I.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
I
that.
will, thank you.
Any other board member have a comment, thought on this? Board Member Rasmussen.
I would just like to reiterate what we talked about yesterday, that, we still have maybe more clarification work to do on, the, required elements of no approval. Well, I wouldn't say approval, but of, that we taken. I don't even know how to say this. The required elements that are in the law that we judge. I'd really like to note that we have changed, we have evolved, and because so many of these say innovative, denied based on the idea that they're innovative, that that may be innovative to the school may not be innovative to us, and that needs to be clarified. And I would ask that those kinds of things be communicated to the schools as well.
Thank you, Board Member Rasmussen. Board Member Neeskens.
I think it may be appropriate for us to have a work session in the future to define innovative. My primary concern, and I echo your concerns as well, Board Member Rasmussen, is there's administrators across the state who, because of previous approvals, are creating applications that resemble previously approved schools. Our focus has shifted, that's clear. But we need to really, I think, in the interest of their time and energy that they put into creating applications, create a more clear focus on what innovative actually means. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from any board members? Member Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Co-Chair, Mr. Slinger. I just wanted to make a comment that kind of piggybacks off of my friend here. That the board will and is hoping and looking to put in the work to define things better to guide future applicants. I don't want these applicants to feel like that their effort was wasted. I think there needs to be work on both ends, not just for us scoring appropriately, but also us giving them clear guidance so that because they want to give us what we want, and we need to be very clear and do the work so that we can give them that opportunity. And we're all excited to do that work in the future, so that we can continue getting these fantastic, very dedicated educators' applications to us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other board members' comments before I ask Chair Tharp if we can move for a motion? Seeing none, Chair Tharp, I have a motion.
Please proceed.
I move to approve the resolution to deny the applications for public charter schools.
You've heard the motion to approve the resolution to deny those charter school applications as indicated on the screen. Is there a second? We have a second. Board member discussion. Yes, I will echo what I just recently said to Kathy with the Charter School Commission. And it goes along the lines of what Dr. Neeskens shared as well, is that we're trying to figure this out as we go. We were given this by the legislature, and we have done our due diligence to do our best, and our interpretation, our understanding, our knowledge has continued to evolve as this process has moved along, as we try to figure out exactly legislative intent. And I recall probably one of my very first board meetings resulted in a very long and protracted discussion about two words which sound very similar to each other, and a lengthy debate about what the meaning of those words were. I hate to even bring it up, but equality and equity, which would seem as a mathematician, I knew exactly what those words meant in my world, but trying to define that in a social society, and we went on and on and on trying to figure that out. And so we are faced with a similar struggle here, thankfully not as politically motivated, but what is innovative? And what does that mean in a 21st century world, especially a world with AI and the rapidly evolving changes in our understanding of brain development and what students need and what education is going to look like. And so defining what innovative is difficult, but not a challenge that this board is afraid to tackle. And we absolutely will be conducting some professional development and working to figure these things out and conduct work sessions so that we can be more knowledgeable on this as well. Other board member comments? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment online? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. The motion on the floor is to approve the resolution as presented on the screen to deny the applications from Custer County Class Academy, Stevensville Alternative Steps Charter School, Lions Path Academy, SOAR Academy, and Columbia Falls Trades Academy. All members in favor of approving the motion as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any members opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Chair, anything else from your charter school committee?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will move on to item number 23, and I'll hand the meeting over to our Macy liaison, Board Member Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the wonderful Miss Langford Forrester on? All right. Jordan, how is it going in your neck of the woods?
Good morning. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, members of the board. So my name is Jordan Langford Forrester, Sikvianitha Bright Shore Woman, and I am the chairperson for the Montana Advisory Council on Indian Education. The Montana Advisory Council on Indian Education met January 7th, and we immediately had a quorum. So we received general updates from the Office of Public Instruction's IFA department, American Indian Student Achievement, and the Superintendent's Office. And we just want to reiterate that the Office of Public Instruction is doing really great things for our Montana students. Our new business included completing our meeting schedule through the summer, and we discussed the potentially having another joint summer meeting with the Board of Public Ed, similar to how we conducted it last year. So Macy would meet as a board, and then we would do a joint meeting together with the BPE in Helena. We're hoping for July 23rd. That would be our preferred date, but we're not looking for an answer right now. Also, McCall informed us that that's during the BPE is meeting in July during the Last Chance Stampede. And so it might just be a little crazy coming into town. And then once I learned what the Last Chance Stampede was, I think it's a perfect time to have a meeting. And so again, we're not asking for an answer necessarily on the schedule, but we would just request July 23rd if possible. And our next Macy meeting will be held over Zoom on February 4th. And that's what I have for you this morning.
Board Member Rasmussen.
Will there be food? Last year was great for food.
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes.
I hope so. I hope
Okay.
so. But I'm actually glad that you brought that up because also do not need an answer right now, but something that I've been thinking about was when the board came and visited us in May, in July, or excuse me, in May in Great Falls. And so whether or not the board would like to do a similar visit again and or somewhere else in Great Falls Public Schools, I would be happy to help coordinate that as well. When you said food, that made me think of the bison skewers that we had.
I think that would be wonderful. I still remember the rice. Oh, it was so good. Oh, it's in my dreams. All right, any other board members? All right, turning it over to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Appreciate your time today. All right, thank you.
Thanks for
Chair
having me.
Maxwell. All right, moving on to item number 24, and our next couple of items are underneath the assessment committee. So we'll hand things over to our assessment committee chair, Board Member Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. If you look at the title of my item, I have decided that McCall gives inverse heaviness to the title versus what it actually covers. So there's lots of words, but it's really simple, means that we need to put this, make this official, this process official. And there's a couple of things I'll just check on, note really quick, and then I'll turn this over to McCall. You'll notice that there were no comments received. And that's important to note because if there were comments, we would be spending this meeting going over those comments. So with that, I'll turn it over to McCall for anything else.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad you brought that up because that is why we are able to do the notice of adoption at this meeting. We are not responding to comments. It also allows us to speed up the timeline for the effective date. You'll notice that the effective date of this then is February 7th, which I know is an odd day. It's a Saturday, I believe, but it allows this to go into effect much quicker, which then allows school districts to see the rules adopted, put them into effect much more quickly and be able to go to work much more quickly in their school districts to see these for the early numeracy adoption in their district. So really excited about these rules being able to go into effect much more quickly. I will say that I dropped the ball a little bit about the evaluation methodology tools. I should have had those on the agenda at this meeting, but I will bring those to you all in March. And so those will be on your agenda in March to adopt for those evaluation methodology screening tools for the early numeracy crosswalk. Thank you to Lori Barron, who I know is listening, for bringing those to my attention. So we'll have those ready to roll in March for the website and get those out to school districts too for their use if they choose to do so. So we'll have those on your agenda in March. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and McCall. Not exactly related to the rules, but do you expect the evaluations to be distinct for the early math and the early reading, or do you is there going to be probably a single, at least a group of single assessments that will determine either side of that question?
Madam Chair, Board Member Quinlan, that's a good question. It's my understanding that I'm also not an expert, but it's my understanding that there's not one tool that can assess for both. But the way that the rules are written, and this is based off of the statute, is that you could assess for either one and still qualify for both literacy and numeracy. So you wouldn't have to assess for literacy and numeracy in order to serve both sets. Instead, you could qualify students for literacy and they could receive both literacy and numeracy. But I know some districts are choosing to do both just to kind of see the markers for students and to see the growth for students in both literacy and numeracy. But in order to qualify for the programs, they don't necessarily need to determine eligibility in both literacy and numeracy.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Chair, I stand ready to make a motion.
Please proceed.
I'm moved to approve the notice of adoption pertaining to rulemaking in our Title 10.
I think you gotta push your mic this down.
No. Here you go.
Fine.
Thank you very much.
For the top thing. Oh, there it is. Now it's normal. That was
I-
weird.
Yeah.
Can I get that back to you? Thanks. That was
Thank
weird.
you. He appeared from nowhere. Wonderful.
He's always watching.
Yes. Go ahead.
I move to approve the notice of adoption pertaining to rulemaking in ARM Title 10, Chapter 54, Early Literacy Targeted Interventions, and ARM Title 10, Chapter 63, Early Childhood Education Standards, and authorize the filing of the notice with the Secretary of State for publication in the Montana Administrative Register. Mr. Chair.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a second by Board Member Quinlan. Board Member discussion. Is there any public comment? Any public comment online? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the action on ARM Title 10, Chapter 54, Title 10, Chapter 63, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And item number 25, Chair Rasmussen.
This is going to include Cedar, who is approaching us now, hopefully with a working microphone. And this is on the information on mass assessment implementation. This follows a meeting that board member Neeskens and I had with Cedar. And so information. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good news, I do have a working microphone, so just give me one moment. I'll go ahead and screen share. Well, good morning. Good to see you again on day 2, this time in person. What a nice location for the meeting. So thank you for having it here. Chair Rasmussen, members of the board, my name is Cedar Rose, spelled R-O-S-E for the record. I have the privilege of serving as assessment director with the Office of Public Instruction. This morning, I am here to present just some clarifications around the MAST, math, and ELA assessment. This item does start on page 346 of your board packet. So as we are in our second year of statewide MAST implementation, and the system is continuing to mature, we have more reports coming out, our technical documentation is becoming much more thorough. It is providing a more detailed and timely information on than our past assessments have, and that's naturally inviting some new questions and some opportunities to dive deeper into assessments, how it can serve students, and also just clarify and those technical components. So this presentation is intended to bring clarity around MAST measures, how results are generated, how reports supports instruction, decision-making, and continuous improvement. So I'm going to cover about 4 major points in this presentation. First, to provide clarity on how MAST results are designed to be used across classroom, school district, and state contexts. To address common misconceptions that are emerging from the field by explaining how MAST reporting is structured and interpreted. To clarify both the technical soundness and the instructional intent of the system, ensuring confidence in the results and the appropriate use, and support informed oversight and clear communication by establishing a shared understanding of what MAST results represent at their various levels. So together, these points are intended to support thorough interpretation and productive conversations around instruction, improvement, and accountability. So we're going to lay some foundation around MAST, including those reasons for those multiple measures. So MAST reporting is built around 3 pretty foundational realities of learning and assessment. So first, learning is developmental and occurs over time. We have heard from our educators, and so we all know working in education, that no single testing moment can fully represent what a student knows and can do. And this is why MAST reporting includes reporting that occurs during and across the school year. Second, different decisions require different amounts of evidence. Instructional adjustments, program evaluation, and accountability decisions each require different kinds of information collected and aggregated at different points in time. And third, the MAST system and reports are intentionally designed to balance these things. So timely feedback that can inform instruction while learning is still underway. Testlet and summative level reliabilities, ensuring results are technically sound and defensible, and appropriate limits on interpretive claims, so reports are used for their intended purposes and not beyond what the evidence can support. Multiple reports are how the system responsibly reflects how learning is actually happening. So as we know, one of the really important shifts in moving to MAST is the move away from an idea that a single report from a state assessment can meet all needs. So it addressed the needs of our students, our families, and our educators, and as a state leaders, MAST reporting exists across 3 foundational levels. So first, which is what is coming out weekly during our testing windows, are those testlet reports. Those are delivered the Thursday after the week of testing and are designed to provide information on a small set of standards to support identification of strengths and gaps and adjust instructional supports as learning and instruction continues. Progress reports, which are those reports that come out after each window I talked about yesterday, our first round of progress reports were released yesterday through the Kite Educator portal. Those are delivered after both windows 1 and 2. These reports are summarizing student cumulative achievement based on all the testlets that are administered to date. So these provide a view on how each student is performing based on the covered content and if a student is on track for proficiency. And finally, those through-year reports or summative reports, which are delivered after window 3, report all achievement across a set of fully assessed standards. And these scores are those scores that are used for accountability and public reporting and can really support those system level decisions. So at the systems level, as we have some misconceptions coming up, we really want to move away from driving any unintended consequences. So a lack of confidence in results and distrust of results that are actually technically sound. Inappropriate use, including overreaction to any single data point, and inconsistent messaging and understanding. So as we are guiding towards very clear communication towards technical soundness, purpose, what those reports can be used for, we continue to leverage training with our districts, outreach, and guidance to the field to support clear understanding. And we hope to see those sound policy decisions, accurate public communication, and appropriate local implementation. So we are going to get into some of the things that we are hearing from the field, the clarifications around them. And please feel free to stop about any questions that come up, because I know that we are going to get into some of the technical things around MAST. So as we planned, after the summer of standard setting of 2025, our testlet level information was able to move away from norm referenced or peer comparison bands to criterion reference levels aligned to grade level expectations as set by our standard setting. So this has caused some misunderstanding and the use of this information while the information was provided in the 2025-2026 school year. So this information is actually providing a clearer picture of student level testlet performance aligned to that end of the year achievement. So as an example, if students statewide uniformly perform poorly on specific testlets using a norm reference measure that we measured in the bands in 24-25, could group students as a level 3, indicating no additional support was needed, even when the performance was not aligned to proficiency. So this move to the levels in 2025-2026 school year provides a much more meaningful information relative to the standards and creates stable metric for future years with a common ruler for measuring testlet performance against our state adopted content standards. This division into those 3 performance levels of students serves the purpose of identifying students for additional support on specific testlets while balancing the small number of questions and making determinations on a subset of standards. So as we know, those testlet items are only about 9 to 11 on those math testlets and 18 for ELA. So a much smaller testlet that we are making these determinations on. Additionally, when we talk to our schools and provide professional development and all of our guidance, it really focuses on using performance levels as a starting point and understanding testlet level report scores, then moving through the more detailed information that are provided on those testlets. So those math misconceptions, those ELA cluster scores, and that item level information. We see bands as a starting point or levels as a starting point, not an ending point in that interpretation.
Thank you. I'd like to stop here because and I'd like to ask if there are any questions to Cedar based upon this particular information she's providing right now.
Mine is just a comment. Thank you for addressing the misconceptions and all of that stuff. It's just shows your support of the field, and it's really valuable. And I know that educators love feeling like they're heard. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cedar. I don't know why, but it's coming as a surprise to me that the 24-25 information was norm referenced. Yet school districts did have access to these standards-based reports for 24-25. So it's kind of a mix of the two things. That's probably what you're going to get into. But so are you telling us that for state level reporting, it was norm reference, but districts had access to the more detailed?
So Madam Chair and Member Quinn, that's a great question. And so the 24-25 through your administration. So before we did our standard setting, we did not have that proficiency level set. So when we're talking about reporting against state standards, that's only on those testlet levels. So that's just the reporting that is only going back to the local levels. The results that I shared during the November meeting, when we came to our statewide proficiencies, those are based on that standard setting, is standard aligned on those statewide proficiencies.
Thank you.
So this change is really only seen at the local level because our testlet level reporting is only happening to our local level. That's a great question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this particular? I just want to say that this move from criterion reference to standards based is probably one of the biggest problems, and with the switch, and hopeful, well, that will never happen again. So so that once that's cleared up and people actually understand, that should help. Okay, go ahead and go on. Thank you for that pause. Apologize, Hannah.
I think we need a little context here on why there's questioning of the results. So I'm going to read off the statewide results from this first interim beginning of year testlet. Because I realize only 2 or 3 of the board members have access to the KITE portal to see the results for the entire state. And I'm gonna share those results now. And this is why I'm so alarmed. For ELA, grade 3, 2% of our students are showing meeting or exceeding proficiency. Grade 4, 3% of the entire state. Grade 5, 11% of 5th graders. So we're talking 11 of 100 kids. 6th grade, 5%, 5 of 100 kids showing meeting or exceeding proficiency on this first testlet. 7th grade, 9%, 8th grade, 5%. So we've actually gone backwards compared to, I think, how our scores looked last year. Math, 3rd grade, 14%, 4th grade, 19%, 5th grade, 18%, 6th grade, 18%, 7th grade, 21%, and 8th grade, 21%. I still do not believe that our students are this low functioning or that our teachers' instruction is this poor across the state, that only 2 of 100 3rd graders can demonstrate meeting or exceeding proficiency on these testlets. So I do, despite the information we just received, continue to have serious test reliability questions. And I will allow you to proceed. I mean, I understand that there's more to come, but it is these numbers across the state, and these are dismally low, where I just do not believe this is reflective of the ability of our students statewide.
Madam Chair, can I provide some context about those reports?
Please do.
So, Madam Chair and Member Niesken, so I think that what we need to also keep in mind is that we are reporting on, even for our progress reports, a subset of standards, and they have a very large confidence interval. So we are reporting on, for math, 3 to 5 testlets, and ELA, 2 testlets. So when we are doing those reporting and we look at those reports and the reports that are going out to schools, you can see the confidence interval in there. We are being very conservative when we are reporting students who are at or meeting or above proficiency. So those are students that we are saying, without a doubt, based on the information that they have provided, are above proficiency. So some things that we need to keep in mind in those reports, that this is early in the year. So for those ELA report testlets, we still have 2 more rounds of testlets to come that will continue to be included in those scoring for those final achievement levels. Those confidence intervals become smaller, and we are able to report with much more certainty. The other thing with math, we know that math compounds on itself. So even if we do see some lower performance at the beginning of the year, we can see that if they are addressed and that instruction continues and those students continue to progress, that progress throughout the year will conclude in higher proficiencies at the end of the year. I think the other thing that we also need to consider is last year's achievement aligned with our Smarter Balanced results. So while there is questioning of, the testlet level reporting, when we aggregate these together, it is aligning with what we had with our last statewide assessment and our NAEP results. So I can see the discouragement. I can see that these aren't things that we want to see, but it is not things that are misaligned with what we have seen with the past at the state level for our statewide assessments or at the national level for what we're reporting on Montana. So this gives us the opportunity to look at those results, intervene with a level of data that we haven't had before and move forward. Those progress reports are not the end all be all. They're an indication of how can we go back, how can we serve those students and make changes as we go through the rest of the year.
You're first.
Thank you. I just
Member Smith.
have a clarifying question. I'd like to restate what I think I heard you say, and I would like you to confirm or deny. What I hear you saying is you're measuring proficiency at the end of 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, at the end of the year. And because these tests are given early in the year, of course, these kids are not going to be proficient yet, but you expect them to be proficient by the end of the year. And yet, as I understand these testlets, they're testing on each specific standard. So the timing's off. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Madam Chair and Member Schmidt, so I think that we need to talk about the difference between the math and the ELA design. I think that's playing into it as well. The ELA design, we are assessing on similar standards throughout the year with depths of complexity increasing. So those students will see similar standards assessed in the middle of the year and end of the year. So those students have the capability of going back, learning, reassessing. For math, I think things to keep in mind is, yes, it is early in the year. I cannot go back and I have not looked at every school's achievement levels for those progress reports, but I think it really is coming down to those confidence intervals and what we are reporting. So I think saying that, only 3% or 5% of our students are proficient or at or above proficiency, that is not necessarily absolutely accurate because we are reporting with a wide confidence interval. So like I said, I think the interpretation of those different reports really need to be considered. This is why we do not publish those progress report data, because those are indications for the school for them to dig deeper into the data, look at where those students need additional support and move forward based on that. It is a signal, not a defining students into specific categories after one TESLA window administration.
I guess the question that runs through my mind is, why would you even report it? If it's such a wide confidence interval and it's early in the year, and I get maybe the system just automatically does that, but putting this aggregate data out there to anybody is causing less confidence in the assessment system. So, I hope it gives you some chance to reflect on this and perhaps do something different in that regard. And at the statewide level, I understand the importance of getting this data to school districts.
Additional.
Can
Okay, you're last and then we'll move on.
I just wanted to say, looking at these scores, I pulled up my 4th grade class in our school. It is one of our highest classes we have. We have, 27 students and 5 of which are in gifted and talented, extremely high. Some are high school level readers and doing really good in math. And we're only at a 12% proficiency with that rating. So that I can understand why that would be concerning and a little scary. That makes me question our other programs or other testing that we use, because for MAPS we're getting different answers. So it is concerning and a little confusing for me.
You've seen some comments. Okay, let's move on.
So looking a little bit further into that tested performance, as educators are diving into those score reports, which we're really liking to see this year, questions have come up around item impact and performance levels. With a misconception about weighted items when we're developing questions or necessarily putting items more than other questions, sometimes focusing on question type. If it is a more interactive item type, that it's going to be weighted more. But in actuality, the differences in item difficulty are the things that are contributing to the putting things in those different levels. So no item is intentionally weighted in item development more than others. The way that our scoring works is that our performance levels are based on an estimated scale score, which is considering both which items students answer correctly and also the difficulty of those items. And so it's not just a simple count of questions right and wrong. So while students may be classified into different bands with similar numbers of item correct, which items are correct does play into those potential differences in TESLIT performance, but not based on any sort of predetermined weighting of those items.
I have a comment about that. So it seems to me that this is a matter of semantics, that the item difficulty really is weighted more. I
So-
would argue that you're saying the same thing with different words.
Madam Chair and Member Schmidt, so weighted would be developing items that we think that are more or less important. Item difficulty is actually derived on how students are performing on those items. And so within our scoring model, which is an IRT scoring model, item difficulty is what's driving those scale scores at the end. So it really is a matter of, are we putting weight on things, or is student performance really deciding which items are more difficult? When we go through that standard setting process, it is based on a little bit of item difficulty when we say, okay, this item is an easier item. So if a student is able to answer this correctly, we can say that they're novice or nearing, but it's very student data driven, not educators placing or state placing any sort of, this is more important or less important. It really has to do with the psychometric scoring models of our assessment.
So I'll clarify really quick, then we'll move on. So the difficulty is determined after everybody takes the test, so you can see how many students have answered a particular question correct. And if the majority of people have not answered that question correct, then it is determined that that item has more difficulty, correct? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, it all has to do with student performance within the item. Yes. So looking about the ELA performance task, we heard a lot of it coming out of administration of window 2 last year. So something we heard was lower than expected scores. This has led to the misinterpretation that achieving full points on components of the rubric was unobtainable and that scoring doesn't align with grade level expectations. So range finding, which was the process that calibrated scoring for performance task, was completed in the summer of 2024 by a group of Montana educators. These calibrations are used for our vendor scoring that occurs after performance task administration each year, with a variety of quality checks to ensure that those are aligning with those educator range finding results. So moving into year 2 of statewide implementation, we have had a lot of focus on preparation for performance task. This has really been at the forefront of our efforts. So we saw last year that some contributing factors to those lower than expected scores from our schools could have come with the amount of time that was spent on performance tasks, with our median time across grade levels was between 5 and 7 minutes for completing that performance task, which is intended to be a much longer write. Additional comments from the field have centered around the fear of public reporting for those lower than anticipated scores. And while our 3-year summative reports are publicly reported and released at the school and the district level, individual TESLIT reports are not publicly reported and are released at the local level for use. So moving a little bit lower into that performance task, there were questions once again about weighting or norm reference scoring that have been brought up. But as we talked about today, as with the rest of MAST, ELA performance tasks are criterion reference against Montana content standards for writing, and they are scored against educator validated rubrics. Additionally, our ELA performance task contributes to about 5% of the overall score aggregated with the 6 other ELA testlets administered throughout the year. So while it is contributing to that overall achievement level, it is in combination with all the other items that are assessed throughout the year. As with any large-scale assessment, we had this when we had Smarter Balance, when we had the CRT. There's concerns about teaching to the test or narrowing the scope of instruction for the sake of performance. So each MAST testlet is aligned to a small group of state-adopted content standards and are clearly defined what each testlet is assessing, and those are publicly available. The goal of MAST is to fit into instruction that is already occurring in classrooms and also span the cognitive complexity to provide transparency around student performance at the current level. So due to the alignment between MAST and our state content standards, along with the ability to assess close to when that instruction has occurred, the need to spend days reviewing prior to administration has really been alleviated. So what we say is MAST is aligned to the content standards. So if you are teaching the content standards, you will be great moving into MAST. So as we continue and we wrap up on our misconceptions, we have really focused on continuing to support the field and implementing MAST and helping them understand results. Obviously, when we have new reports come out, it has another opportunity for us to go in, really clarify the intent of those reports and how they can be used. But there are central principles that continue to guide our design, our test design and our reporting. So first, MAST is coherent, criterion reference system aligned to Montana state content standards. Student results reflect performance relative to defined state grade level expectations, not comparison to other students like other interim assessments do. Second, all results reflect intentional expectations for students. Reported outcomes are grounded in grade level standards and are designed to support understanding of what students are expected to know and can do. And third, our item design, our scoring, and our reporting follow established best practices within educational measurement. We rely on our technical advisory committee, technical advisors constantly to ensure that the technical side is where it needs to be for this assessment. So this is including rigorous development processes, review cycles, validation to ensure the results are fair, reliable, and meaningful. Along with this, as I noted yesterday, we just submitted our peer review submission to the Department of Education, which is a key part of ensuring that technical validity, making sure that our results are reliable, and that is a requirement for any statewide assessment that is given throughout the United States. And finally, our transparency and educator involvement have been central to the system and will continue to be. Montana educators contribute to item review, standard setting, interpretation guidance, and ensure MAST reflects both technical rigor and instructional relevance. Like I said, we continue to rely on our assessment implementation committee that meets monthly, that when these questions arise, when we talk about training, when we talk about what does the field need to really be able to use these results meaningfully, we have that strong sounding board to make sure that we are moving forward with our educators' best interests, intent, and student achievement in mind. Together, these principles support MAST results and their appropriate use. So just a few things as MAST continues to provide a clearer and more detailed information about student learning. It also invites us to reflect not only on results, but also our collective response to them. It really gives us a new opportunity to look at assessment in a way that we haven't before. So these are some things that we think about and wonder about consistently as we are moving to a much different statewide assessment system than we've had in the past. How does a clearer definition of grade level proficiency change how results feel compared to past assessments? What does it mean for a system to reveal learning gaps that may have existed but were less visible in previous assessment systems? How do we distinguish between challenges created by the assessment and challenges revealed by the assessment? And if MAST is helping us to see student learning more clearly at much closer intervals of time, how do we ensure that our response really focuses on action and improvement and not discomfort? So these are questions that we are using to help frame MAST not as an endpoint, but as a tool for understanding and strengthening learning across Montana. So as MAST continues to mature, our work moving forward is focusing on a few paralleling priorities. Continuing to address questions and misunderstandings as they emerge and the system is continuously used, strengthening support and clear and consistent interpretation of results, and also maintaining technical rigor that ensures results are valid and reliable. This ongoing work is essential to ensuring that mass reporting is not only technically sound, but is also well understood and meaningfully used to support instruction, inform oversight, and most importantly, strengthen the outcomes for our Montana students. With that, I will stand for any additional questions that you have.
Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Cedar. One thing I note here is very similar to what I shared earlier. Education is evolving and changing. We're using different tools. We're looking at this differently. And there is a part of me that longs for the day of just give the ITBS, because I could explain and everybody understood the Iowa Test of Basic Skills and what that meant and what those numbers were. And we're trying to wrap our head around something that we've never done before. And we're trying to do that. So, Madam Chair, we are ahead of schedule. So I would encourage us and ask you to take the next 15, 20 minutes or so. And please continue to facilitate discussion, public comment, and questions from board members and any practitioners who are online as well. I think we need to have people continue to flesh this out. And I apologize, Cedar, if this feels like the hot seat, but you're the expert in this and people have questions and are concerned. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board Member Quinlan.
Thank you. And Cedar, I just love your last question here about how to focus on action and improvement rather than discomfort. And I certainly appreciate we're asking some tough questions, and you are aware of the challenges of the assessment system. But can you explain for the board, my understanding, because I've heard people say it, is a grade level standard is only assessed once, even though a student continues to take testlets over the course of the year. So why, I guess I'm not understanding whether these initial reports that show only 2% of, a group of students are proficient. Are the initial reports showing the percentage of students that are performing well against a specific standard, or are they looking at proficiency? Only 2% at the beginning of the year are proficient of where you'd expect them to be at the end of that grade.
Madam Chair and Chair Quinlan, so once again, there's two different blueprints for math and for ELA. So we'll talk about math first. So math has 12 testlets that are administered throughout the year, each covering different strands of standards. So a strand could be one standard that's, a little bit larger, more robust, or it could be multiple standards that are related. Those testlets are not re-administered throughout the year. So at the beginning of the year, our educators, our building leaders go in, they schedule which testlets are taking throughout the year. So how students are performing on those testlets are the results, and they're compared to our standard setting proficiency that we have set as a state at the end of the year. So and the conversation about reteaches has come up reassessing has come up many times, but as we know, math builds on each other. So if we are seeing in those early testlets, if you see a student that's struggling on, base 10 operations, you have to change things in order to be able to have different results on those later testlets. And so each one of those testlets are combined. The simplest way I can think about it is like a grade book model to have that end of year achievement that we put on that end of year scale and that we define those achievement standards. But yes, our testlet performance, those levels that we have, are on the same scale as our achievement level at the end of the year.
Follow-up question. Do you think part of the perhaps training challenge is for districts to choose the appropriate testlet for what the students have just been taught?
Member Quinlan, that is a great point that you call out, and that is something that coming out of year one and the feedback that we heard in year one was that there wasn't necessarily a lot of connection between what teachers were teaching within their classroom and the scheduling that was happening. We knew that a lot of our testing coordinators, our building level coordinators were the ones who are doing those scheduling. So we did a lot of work starting last spring into Summer Institute, going into that scheduling that happened in August through September, to talk directly to our educators, communicate with our educators on, you need to be aware of this as well, have those communications, though, that plan to talk about how you're going to schedule. But then we also created frameworks for our testing coordinators to be able to facilitate those conversations in a process. So it's like, yes, you may be the beginning and the end point of this, but if your educators are not seeing the schedule that you are putting in there and having that input, there is going to be that disjointedness. So we've seen much less conversations with us of like, hey, we're not necessarily aligning. More of the conversations of alignment are our students are not where they need to be coming into the beginning of the school year. And so we're trying to backfill as we're also trying to cover grade level content. When we talk about our questions, that is not a new challenge. That is a challenge that Mass has revealed, that our students are not coming into their grade level ready for grade level content. And so as we continue to be able to use the results and leverage these results and have that marker for where students should be throughout the year to get through all of the standards they need to be grade level proficient, I hope to see that less and less.
And then my next question is, Julie, were you looking to make a comment?
Madam Chair, yes, can I just follow up on some of the questions, if you will? So just to kind of add, I think that coming back to Board Member Neeskin's question, right, about the new progress reports that just were published yesterday. So taking a look at that and seeing, for example, how many of your students are meeting or exceeding proficiency, say at 5th grade ELA, and then you're seeing that state level thing. I think what we've got to do is go back and reflect on and help communicate what is the purpose of that report and what is it telling us, what is it not, and really explaining what we mean by these confidence intervals. Because if the confidence interval is really wide, right, then it's saying we're not going to tell you that like 50% of the students really are at proficiency, because we want to be sure that they're progressing, but we can't say for certain that they're going to be at the end of the year. And so I think they're making progress towards being proficient at the end of the year, but there's such a wide range of confidence. What that could do, what does that mean for our teachers who are pulling up this report, for example, at Whitehall today, right? Thinking about, what does this mean for me? Are my students on track to be proficient by the end of the year? Or do I need to be really concerned about what that means? And then what do I do with that information? How do I then get to the student report, dig a little bit deeper, but also help our teachers understand if the intention of these reports was to help guide that conversation of, are they making progress towards, being proficient at the end of the year? But we leave that confidence interval so wide that could cause some tension for our teachers. So I'm trying to reflect on, as we opened up this new report, what were we intending for that report, and how are we reading that report, and what are we taking away from it, so that teachers can make sound decisions of what it really means and what we're really communicating, and so how it helps them guide that conversation. So I'm just trying to be reflective. I'm listening to the conversation and thinking about, now that that new report is out, what did it mean by this large, if you will, confidence interval? So just taking that information back, just so that you know, and I think we really got to reflect on that, on what is the communication around that? Is that tool actually helping, or is it harming? And so I hear you today, Board Member Neeskin's almost saying, ooh, it might be a little bit more on the harm side right now. So I'm just trying to be thoughtful around what does that particular report, now that it's in the ecosystem, what's it doing to the overall assessment, and how are we using that report and not using that report? So just want to say that I heard you. Thank you.
I appreciate your reflection on it. That is exactly the message I am conveying. I think this test has had a PR problem from the start, and these types of reports and numbers exacerbate people's belief in its validity, its reliability, how it was created, all those things. It would have been much more helpful to have the confidence interval published, like an estimation that 0 to 35% of your students will meet or exceed proficiency. Senior made a remark about, it's a very large confidence interval. These scores are being reflected on the conservative side. So what is the confidence interval? Is it different for each grade level and each assessment? I would assume so. But how large is it, I guess?
Thank you, Board Member Neeskens. I think those are the critical questions, right? And so I think that in the desire to try to publish something for our teachers to understand instructionally, right? Because this isn't necessarily, this progress report isn't something we're reporting for our summative scores at the end, right? It's meant to be instructionally useful of, are we making progress and are we moving along where we need to be? But if that's like, that was the intention. We may have fallen a little short of that or may need to support that a little bit around that conversation. So I just, it's resonating and I'm sure that we will huddle and come back to the team, but I really appreciate your comment around this is difficult when we're trying to continue to build confidence around the assessment. Thank you.
We'll take some of the comment from online. McCall, could you facilitate that, please?
Sure, I do see a hand up from Lori Barron. I'll let you speak now.
Are you able to hear me?
We can.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you very much for your service to the state of Montana. My name is Laurie Barron, Lauriebarron, and I am the very proud superintendent of the Evergreen School District in Kalispell, serving in my 13th year in that role. I am here to share my continued concerns regarding the state required MAST assessment. In April of 25, the Northwest Montana Association of School Superintendents sent a letter to the board and to OPI sharing our concerns about MAST. And we were very grateful to be heard and to receive replies from both agencies. Yet many of those concerns remain and some of them continue to grow. The well-intentioned goals of OPI do not reflect the realities in Montana's classrooms. The disconnect between the formal goals and information being shared and what is actually happening in schools is much larger than presented, and numerous questions remain unanswered. I still have serious concerns in 4 primary areas. Number 1, the lack of confidence, trust, validity, and reliability of the current scores. Number 2, the rigid structure of requiring certain standards to be taught during a specific window, since MAST assessments do not, as they were originally advertised they would do, allow credit for student growth. Number 3, the amount of time students are testing and how much this takes away from instruction. And number 4, the lack of thorough professional development for teachers and students in implementing MAST. Regarding the results, our scores for this first window are dismal. So are the state's, as you just heard. It seems almost impossible to me that only 2% of Montana's 3rd graders can read as of November, as the current results suggest and will be interpreted. This meeting and the progress report assessment results that have been shared are public. Everyone's going to hear them. This result is very similar to what we saw with the lack of confidence in the writing assessment last year, that we still haven't received information on how to address that. These results are an unfair and embarrassing representation of our students and teachers to their families and the public. Cut scores have been developed too early. Most educators don't understand how MAST testlet score cut scores were even made or how they'll combine to determine the overall proficiency score. We certainly don't understand this confidence interval. While there is certainly plenty of room for, and we must continue to work to grow and improve, I am struggling to find value these assessments are intended to provide. I am begging, I have asked for 4 years, give us more time to do it right before we use these results for anything of consequence. I refuse to let these scores be the full representation of skill, passion, and knowledge of teachers and students in the Evergreen School District. I am in classes watching students read, comprehend, and successfully compute mathematical equations. I trust my observations and our other data points in our district far more than I trust these MAST results at this point, especially when I triangulate them with teacher and progress monitoring assessments, both of which say our students know more. For one standard, for example, the teacher assessment and our progress monitoring assessment, understanding those are not perfectly aligned, show almost the exact same proficiency percentage. The MAST assessment for that same standard in window 1 shows proficiency 31% below these other 2 assessments. The one piece of data that stands out and doesn't fit, all taken at the same time of year, MAST. Regarding time for teaching content standards, the ridging testing windows, particularly for math, have forced teachers to give a MAST testlet when they know students aren't ready or before they've even taught the standard. If a student doesn't understand concepts of ratios and unit rates for 6th grade math in November, they never get credit for knowing it later in the year. There is no opportunity for students to demonstrate growth through these scores. So the scores right now count, even though we say it's just a progress monitoring. As we were told time and time again that the new MAST assessment would demonstrate growth, and it does not. For example, 6th grade math unit on ratios and unit rates was only half completed when our students were forced to take the MAST test because we were stopping and reteaching and assessing as a good teacher does, and then the window was closing. There was no time to teach unit rates, find students' weaknesses, and reteach for the MAST testlet. Certainly we taught that. It was just after the testlet window. Regarding time for testing, this year's MAST window 1 for math testlets took approximately 1.5 to 2 class periods to complete for each testlet. There are 4 testlets. Thus, in just this first testing window, teachers lost approximately 7 instructional periods. Our teachers then spent an additional 4 to 5 hours of the testing window, often during their prep time, pulling students who needed much more time to assess or who were absent for 1 or more of their 4 testlets, pulling them from other critical classes. Over 3 testing windows this year, this testing time will equate to 21 class periods of math MAST testing, plus an additional 15 hours for teachers to provide additional testing time and makeups. And this doesn't even include classroom and district assessments that we must continue to give, as those currently give us more reliable and usable results for improving instruction and student outcomes. Our teachers work diligently to make class and assessments engaging and important. Students care about classroom assessments because they go over them the next day. With our district's Ames Web Plus assessments, students get to see their scores immediately and are excited to see how they did. For MAST, it takes approximately 2 weeks to get the full results for all students because so many are making them up throughout the time. The MAST State Progress Reports, scheduled to be released, as it was noted here, at the end of window 1, were released yesterday. Window 1 ended in November. We got the results this summative 2 months later. Our students currently have very little or no investment in MAST. In fact, it's something they dread because it happens so frequently. And I fear our teachers and administrators are starting to feel the same way. And finally, regarding professional development, we understand that this assessment is new. Evergreen has been on board from day 1. We have participated in so many meetings. We voluntarily did every piece of the pilot. We are on board and want to be a positive member of this team. We are not trying to fight the test in and of itself. We want to see it be successful. But please give us and the entire state the time to make it happen before judging and penalizing us based on these questionable results, particularly given the continued confusions in how the assessment is developed and scored, as indicated in the many questions we're hearing today from all of you. The only training our staff has received is through secondhand knowledge from our district testing coordinator, who's new to her role this year. One of our experienced teachers just learned which MAST tests allow calculators, which is most of them. With Smarter Balance, it was very few, so she didn't use calculators. She now knows that, she's implemented it, and we hope to see more improvement. The information and platforms for our state assessments are changing so quickly, it is hard for one staff member to keep up. I cannot even imagine the stress in our small, single administrator schools and how they're keeping up with all this. The state assessment, alternative assessments have completely changed this year, along with adding a new MAST science pilot, which we haven't received a lot of information on, and we're worried about that. Add in WIDA access, NAEP, MSA, and the preparation and planning needed for each of these assessments is almost overwhelming. Again, we know we must continue to work to grow and improve, and I and our administrators and teachers in the Evergreen School District take full responsibility for that. But for now, we're not willing to use MAST as an indicator of that growth or improvement. We are not uncomfortable when we see needed action for improvement. We are concerned that those actions will be based on invalid and unreliable data. We do not have fear of public reporting of student achievement. We have fear of unfair and inaccurate public reporting of student achievement. Our teachers are exhausted trying to implement this assessment and be heard about their concerns. I am moving from frustration to disappointment. And I'm not sure how we make a difference anymore, but I refuse to stop trying. And that's why I'm here today and grateful that you're giving me this opportunity. I'll close with saying I believe in and am proud of our Evergreen students and teachers, and I stand behind them. And I'm saddened to see them represented so poorly by this one assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Any other online comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm not sure how to to address Lori's comments. I think that the best thing is to realize that there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there. And they speak to some of the things that you've addressed here today, which shows us that two things. Number one, Rome was not built in a day, not even in a year. And so there's a lot of work left to do. If this is going to become the thing that we all think it could be, and you'll see, if you look, you're seeing people, the educators nod their heads, yes. If this is going to be the thing that we think it could be, there's going to have to be a lot more training, a lot more understanding. I know, I'm going to comment now, I know just understanding the difference between norm reference and criterion reference, for me, that's easy. Maybe for some of us, that's easy. But for a lot of people who've never had any of that training, that is gobbledygook, you know? And you're nodding your head, so you know that I'm right. I think that practically everything that you spoke about today, even some of that for me who has a background in testing, I had to stop and think about that, you know, each item, which is why I stopped you so that we could all have a moment to reflect. So I don't think we're done. Sorry, Julie, I don't think we're done. I don't think we're done. I would like to suggest that we continue to meet and continue to talk, and you continue to show us what you've looked at. My concern is this. This is what I wrote down. Being shown apparently failing scores or embarrassing scores in great schools are not encouraging teachers to try harder. One of two things are going to happen based on my experience. Either the teachers are going to quit innovating or they're going to quit. That's my experience. And we can't afford that. Especially teachers who, and I wrote this too, especially teachers who are really trying to innovate, you know, are really trying to do things for kids. So somewhere in there, there's a large disconnect. And I don't know where it is. I'm not going to say where that is, but that disconnect has to be bridged. Okay. That's what I'm going to say. I see a couple of nods. Thank you for that kindness for a person who's retired now. Is there any closing comments that anybody would like to make? Limit yourself to about 15 seconds, please. Yeah.
I would like to say thank you, first of all, for addressing these issues and not covering it up, because covering it up doesn't work. I appreciate the movement. I'm very concerned about the fact that our kids are not learning, and whether that's measured with MAST or NAEP or Smarter Balance, you know, all of them are saying the same thing in different ways. I think the potential for a MAST is huge. And I think, just as Board Member Rasmussen said, our problem is communication and training. And if you can overcome the communication issue, we're going to be rolling. But we've got to do that. So thank you for your efforts, and there's a lot more to do.
Yes. Board Member Neeskens.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. I can tell you my comments we're representative of a large portion of administrators across the state who routinely tell me this, very concerned. And so, I just would ask you to reflect on the fact that, the understanding, the PR issue, all of these exist in significant, quantities across the state. I feel I do have a good understanding, given the amount of conversations that I've had. However, what I am commenting on is how people perceive this. This is a perception issue, which I think is directly related to how we are communicating what this information represents and how people are interpreting it. But I am concerned because we know the media picks up this information and it is, they're going to say 2% because they also don't have an understanding of what this means. And it is concerning to me that our Office of Public Instruction is sending this report out to districts. And then, of course, it's getting misinterpreted by multiple layers of people. So thank you again for listening to our concerns.
Yes, Board Member Maxwell.
I just wanted to kind of come off of what Board Member Neeskin said. You guys have a really, really hard job, and there's poison darts coming from every single direction towards you. But I want to share what my principal used to tell me. When they're loud, it means they care and they're invested and they want it to work. When they're quiet, that's when it's done. So try to take it as an encouragement that everyone's talking because they want it to work. It's when it goes quiet that we've lost them. So just try to take that as encouragement.
Any other comments? With that, I'd like to thank you, both of you. I think that you're getting, when I read this, I think that you're beginning to get at it. I don't think we're done, but I think you're beginning to get at some of the concerns and handle them one at a time, handle them 6 at a time. I'll let you guys decide. Thank you. Board Member, our Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a final thought with this discussion, I just want to thank you, Cedar, for your work. I believe I have an idea where this is all going. I am not a psychometrician. I've got a lot of experience, but I don't fully understand that. Our society, our media, our parents, our taxpayers, our patrons, they understand. Okay, now it just all of a sudden rebooted, whatever. They're seeing numbers and they think that that is the end all be all. They don't understand, I think, all of these details, and there is a steep learning curve. We faced that as a board when we tackled Chapter 55, and your colleagues at the OPI got pretty well reamed over that as well. I think we're in a good, we're getting in a better place. It's a steep change. It is, and nobody likes change. It is uncomfortable. It is difficult. But if we always continue to do things the way we did things, I'd still have to drive 55 going across the state. Thankfully, we don't do things the way we do things. We must move forward, and I thank you for your efforts. I hope you're not discouraged. I hope that we can continue to support you in these things. And I think that we've explained this is not a Cedar Rose issue. This is not an assessment. This is, and we've said this all along, this is a PR issue, and we're trying to get people to know and learn all of this as fast as everything continues to evolve. And this conversation will absolutely continue, and we want to continue to support you. And this board, I think, it stands willing to make whatever adjustments we need to do to help the field, to help the OPI, and to help with the public relations aspect of this, and to continue to grow, because we want our assessments to be meaningful and useful as well. With that said, let us stand in recess until 10:20. At 10:20, we will reconvene with item number 26 and the licensure committee. This board is now in recess. Call this meeting back to order. You know, the Montana Board of Public Education, and we are now on item number 26. This is under the Licensure Committee. Dr. Slinger.
Thank you, Chairman Tharp. So this is an action item on a proposed notice for public hearing and timeline pertaining to ARM Title 10, Chapter 57. So if I am correct, I was thinking back on this, this is the third meeting in a row we've been discussing this as far as special education license, technician license presentation we first saw in Dillon. And then we again discussed it the meeting in November, and then we again now hearing this. This should not be a surprise to anyone. This very much is us moving forward with what all those presentations have led to. I would ask Executive Director Flynn to walk us through what we are being asked to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is based off the conversation that happened yesterday, the information you received from Dr. Mergel and Mr. Patrick Cates. They kind of gave you a quick presentation on the recommendation for the new Class 9 Special Education Technician license. You'll be able to see the actual notice of proposed rulemaking in your packet starting on page 360. What this rulemaking notice says is that there will be a hearing date and time on Tuesday, March 3rd at 10 a.m. I'll preside over that hearing. And then you'll see that we will accept comments through March 6th at 5 p.m. The rules will also be within that notice. It is new Rule 1, which again encapsulates the exact information that you received yesterday from Dr. Mergel and Mr. Cates. And then again, based on basically the same information that we shared earlier, if we receive comments, you will review those comments at your next meeting. If we don't, you can also do the notice of adoption. There's a timeline that's in page 364. This timeline will be potentially changed, edited, depending on kind of what we receive as comments. So Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Thank you very much. Chair Tharp, if it's all right with you, I'd make a motion and then we could discuss more during that.
Okay, I think we're ready. Go ahead.
Thank you. I move to approve the proposed notice of public hearing and timeline pertaining to rulemaking in ARM Title 10, Chapter 57, Special Education Technician License, and authorize filing of the notice with the Secretary of State for publication in the Montana Administrative Register.
Heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Board Member Rasmussen. Board member discussion. Been kind of talking about this for a few meetings here, looking at the language, and now we're ready to roll. Is there any discussion? Board Member Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I'm really glad to see this. I really appreciate and enjoy the proactiveness of those that brought this to us for consideration as we address shortages, education shortages, and getting people up to speed and education and training to help them do their job is something that we should be about encouraging. And I think that this does that. So thank you.
Thank you. Other board member discussion? And then, as was pointed out to us yesterday, once this process is through, then there'll need to be some work in Chapter 55, specifically defining what that individual with that particular license can do as differentiated from what the requirements would be for somebody who is a fully licensed special ed teacher. But this is a necessary first step. There's no other board member discussion. Is there any public comment? Any public comment online? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the proposed notice of public hearing and timeline regarding Chapter 57 Special Ed Technician License, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, next item here has to do with the Accreditation Committee. Chair Quinlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a presentation, a recommendation on intensive assistance process for accreditation. And I'm going to turn it over to Tyler Capice and also Julie Mergel when she's able to join us.
Thank you, Chair Quinlan, members of the board. We are coming before you today to talk about the incentive assistance process. We'll provide a summary of what our meetings looked like over November and December. It was a very quick process. And then Dr. Mergel will go more in depth with the timeline. We'll talk about the intensive support network that was created out of our meetings with the task force members. And then we'll talk a little bit about the 4 phases as well. So we'll start on page 354 of your packet. The beginning of the packet is just a thank you to Intensive Assistance Task Force members. We brought together, as I told you at the November meeting, a very knowledgeable, diverse group of people across the state of Montana. We had our support partners, including Executive Director Flynn, members of the School Administrators of Montana, MASBO, on and on. We had many tribal representatives from across the state as well, tribal educators. We had leadership within schools, including 2 current superintendents across the state. We brought together just a really, really great group of people. Some of them might be here online listening on the YouTube stream as well. So we came together over a series of 5 meetings. We started with an introduction in the middle of November where task force members came together virtually. We discussed kind of an introduction. Dr. Mergel gave a little background on what this process would look like. And we just kind of came up with the why around why this work is so important and what the board is asking us to do here. Session 2 met right before the November board meeting when we talked a little bit about this process with you all before. That was a technical session where people on the task force received a background on the 2 accountability systems for the state of Montana, the state accreditation system, and then the federal accountability system under ESSA. We then moved into early December where the 3rd meeting really took shape in the form of a panel. So we had 2 current active administrators here in Montana sit on a panel, as well as a previous administrator on a tribal at a tribal school. They came together and really just had an honest, open discussion about struggles, about successes and wins, and then also supports that are needed for their communities. Then we came together 2 days in person here in Helena. That was an intense, very crucial time to meet together. We talked about what schools look like where students thrive and also what this process could look like, right? We've created a kind of a basis of that with some really interesting and interactive activities. The second day started with a student panel. And then revisited what was discussed on the first day. So we broke up into 4 small groups. We talked through what the 4 phases, which you will see here in your board packet, could look like. And then teams went around and discussed, and added to what the previous teams had done. We then had a closing session on December 18th where members came together and looked over proposed ideas that came out of the in-person sessions, which you'll see here in your board packet. Then we have very considerate next steps on what the task force internal group is going to work on, as well as potential external partners. We talked about innovative plans. We talked about what we at the OPI are going to do to create supports for those schools and intensive assistance so that they're not sitting there creating documents. They have that ready to go and they can present that to their school boards, to the Board of Public Ed, and to the state superintendent. Then finally, at the end of page 358 and end of 359 is a list once again of your task force members. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Mergel, who will now go through the timeline, through the 4 phases and the intensive support networks.
Thank you, Tyler. Good morning. For the record, Julie Mergel, Chief Program Officer. It's good to be with you today. So I'm actually looking at some of the documents that are in your packet, starting on page 365 as we're going through it. And so we are here today to just kind of present information about what the task force has come up with to date, hoping to gather any questions or comments so that we can take it back and kind of polish it up bring more details so that we come forward in March is when we would be asking for your approval of this process. So as we're going through it, certainly let's pause and stop if there's any questions or comments on each of the components that you would like me to take back to that internal work group so that when we do come to you in March, we've got a good final project. So I want you to think about it almost in draft mode.
Just a second, Dr. Mergel.
Yes.
A note for the record, we had an updated board packet, so those numbers page numbers might be off by about 9 or 10. We had additional information that was in there. So which page are you looking at right now?
So I'm looking at the page that has the vision statement
Okay,
on
that's-
it.
okay,
And
that's-
then
Okay,
there's a
that's-
circle.
That's 373 on ours for board members, if you got the updated packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Tharp. So the group had come up with a vision statement and some of the pieces in there that they really wanted to express were that they wanted this intensive assistant process to be very intentional, individualized, and culturally relevant. They wanted to ensure that it was designed to both honor local control and to maintain clarity and accountability simultaneously. They wanted to ensure that this process would help schools really focus explicitly on strategies, really ensure that they're providing opportunities, demonstrating progress really towards that overall achieving student outcomes. And so the task force was really wanting to relay that idea of what this process would look like and that intentionality around it, wanting to really think about it as both how do we empower at the local control while also setting the stage for what our expectations are and some accountability. So what you'll see in that graphic is a circle, and there's a couple layers to that circle. And so there were some pieces that the group really wanted to ensure supported each of the phases. So they developed this intensive assistant process to be within what we call 4 phases. So the first phase, beginning with a system analysis, and we'll talk a little bit more about what these are, moving into innovation planning, going into implementation and what it means for exit and sustainability. At the heart of that, they want to be sure that there is a strong support network. And so they want to ensure that the school teams that are implementing this intensive assistant process will be supported. And that meant that we are going to their recommendation is to create a network coordinated by the OPI, that the network will build community amongst the schools that are in intensive assistant process and learn from each other, and to connect them to resources as they move through these 4 phases. The network will be designed to foster vital connections to partners, educational experts, and streamline access to these supports to the schools. By leveraging partnerships and peer networks, this initiative then can deliver on operational and leadership guidance that drives the systematic change that will be needed at the local level. It'll be a collaborative approach to ensure that each school has the tools and community support needed to do that. So that's kind of at the heart of it. But to talk a little bit more about the 4 phases of what they are there, the team developed the next document, which has 4 columns. And so the first phase is around this system analysis. But prior to that, engaging in the system analysis, the team really wants to ensure that there's some strong acknowledgement and importance at the local level that the board, the local board, and the tribal community, if it is a tribal school that is in intensive assistance, really begin and understand what it means before the process even begins. What do you mean we're in intensive assistance? What does it mean that we have to meet some exit criteria to continue to be accredited? So some of the upcoming work is to really think about taking prior to engaging in any form of system analysis, structuring what is a consensus workshop That came from Dr. Watson over at SAM, of really thinking about how do we work with a local school board and key school and community leaders to commence this and first identify what it means to be an intensive assistance. And the purpose of that consensus workshop will be to tackle the persistent challenges that, if not corrected, will lead to the loss of school accreditation. So in a collaborative approach, clarify the background of the accreditation issue and why it matters. The outcome of the workshop between the local board and the leaders will be established a shared approach and a collective accountability for designing the school and reforming what has to happen at the school with the larger school community. Good morning, Superintendent. And so we were really thinking deeply, the task force, you guys, around if there's not a sense of ownership of what's happening, we don't want instability or there to be a piece of not understanding what it means and a collective investment and buy-in to the process. So prior to engaging in that system analysis, there also is a piece around being sure that we design tribal consultation process for those schools identified in intensive assistance that serve a high percentage of our Native American students. That we really want to describe how a school leader enter into meaningful consultation with their local tribal leaders and establish reciprocity between the school district and the community. So we really want to map out an expectation for the school to present the system analysis and the innovation planning and potentially go in front of Macy even and think about what does that mean? And how are we working with our tribal community? But we really want to have a process to outline why and how it's essential for our school officials to gather the needs and desires of their local Indigenous nations and that inform the programmatic instructional components and include in the support for our districts like documents that we give them and resources for ways for them to engage with their Native communities to cultivate that sustainable school. So that we're going back with an internal smaller group, taking this information now and saying, what kind of guidance or resources can we put together so that at the start of the process, these are the pieces that would occur before we begin into those phases. Then moving into that system analysis. So what will be designed and developed, or how is this system analysis maybe different than what our schools have done previously through a comprehensive needs assessment? We're going to really dig in and develop some checklists and templates and some rubrics and guidance documents to inform the system analysis for schools and districts identified in intensive assistance. We want to ensure that they have access to tools such as Circles of Reflection, which is a national tool for system analysis in tribal communities that will be used by a school and district to engage in a comprehensive system analysis before redesigning or thinking about the school to diagnose root causes of issues like low achievement and engagement, identify assets of a community, build shared understanding, and identify the strengths and the weaknesses. The system analysis will enable the school community to develop an innovation plan for effective sustainable change rather than a superficial fix, ensuring resources are used efficiently for positive student outcomes. The system analysis will be different from a comprehensive needs assessment or gap analysis that have been used previously for school improvement. So the system analysis for school redesign digs deeper to understand why those gaps exist and how to fundamentally change the system's interconnected structure, like the leadership or the operations. The system analysis will enable the school community team to develop an innovation plan that will fundamentally explore new models or structures or strategies, not just incremental fixes. A key difference, like with a CNA asks, what's wrong? Whereas a system analysis asks, why is it wrong? And how do we rebuild it differently? A CNA gathers kind of broad data, whereas a redesign analysis or system analysis uses the data to understand the causal relationships and the systematic influences. So the CNA informs us what to fix versus a redesign analysis informs how to fundamentally restructure.
So the stakeholders redesign involves more collaborative cross-functional teams with district and community buy-in for deep change, not just data collection. So a lot of conversation around that we're just not going in and doing a CNA, looking at data and saying what's wrong, but a full system analysis of saying, why are we getting the results we're getting and what's the cause of that? And how do we dig in deeper? Looking at community assets, a much broader range when we talk about system analysis. So thinking about an internal group, digging to that next level of developing some of the tools that would need to be in place in order for a system analysis to occur, as well as putting out an RFI, request for information, to potentially build a list of third-party entities who could also support districts to go through the system analysis. So there's a lot of thought around this. Is going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. If you're going to go to that deeper level, schools are going to need a good length of time. And we'll see this here in a minute on the timeline, but to really engage in that first so that when you go into planning, it's very thoughtful and intentional and explicit. So speaking about the next phase, innovation planning, and I think we're going to be up for writing a definition for what we mean by innovation after your earlier conversation. But when we're speaking about innovation planning, what they
Julie,
mean
can I
by
just
this
see
phase.
if,
Go ahead.
If there are any questions from board members about the first systems analysis. Board Member Rasmussen.
Thank you. I'll try not to disappoint here. As I was reading this, I really, there's just a lot of really good things. But at the core, this will be phase one, especially the systems analysis, well, phase two, too, all of them will be difficult to do without continuity, in personnel. And so how, I'd like to know, as you went through this, how you took that into consideration, because that in Montana schools can be problematic, especially if you're in a single administrator school, but even if you're not. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you took that into consideration as you developed this?
Chair Quinlan, Board Member Rasmussen, very good question. I think that was a big part of the conversation at the task force session of thinking about why it would be important to ensure community buy-in and understanding of the process up front, so that regardless who the leader is, there's more than one person in there doing that work, right? And having to complete things. We also talked about what you're bringing up, which is if you have a leader who's in a school that's already struggling and they are trying to survive, if you will, to keep the school doors open and the learning going on and all of the things that have to happen, going through this process as well could be additional work and require a lot of time, if you will, as you mentioned, for phase one and phase two. And so that's why it's really critical to be thinking about what are the resources that are going to be available to support any community that would go into that. Do they hire additional people? Do we look at these third-party entities? What would be the role of the OPI with that coordination, if you will, of the support system? Because putting this on and these additional tasks without thinking about what that means for that leader is a piece that was, I think, really critical for this task force to be thinking about. How do we support them with that then? How do we give them other people who can help them go through the process while they're also doing their work?
Glad to know you've been thinking about that's concern. I think that could be derailed the whole process anyplace.
Other board members? Board Member Maxwell.
I just was wondering, have you guys put any thought to, let's say that this district also has a title audit that year or has other ginormous projects, what you have control over, maybe pausing that for the year to help them get the foundational. That way they're not doing 2 or 3 ginormous things, because that would stress me out.
Yes, Chair Quinlan and Board Member Maxwell, yes, absolutely. That was a critical piece of saying, what are the things we might need to, what barriers or other things we might need to seek to pause, if you will, so that they could be able to really focus on this high level. Yes, we did.
Other board members? Please continue then.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about like this whole process of what it would look like to start going into the system analysis. And now the next phase would be planning. And so the group had talked about what would it mean to design and develop documents or templates or a rubric that would be given to say this is what we expect in the planning for our school districts that are identified as intensive assistance. So like up front, here's what we're going to expect back from you. What kind of a plan? I take it almost similar to what you guys have done with your charter schools, right? Here's a plan of what we're going to need to see, of what you're intending to do, and that needs to be fleshed out. And so the innovation plans will include the school district's overall approach to redesigning their school, starting over and thinking about what really needs to be done, the details of the plan, the importance of the plan, and accelerating academic achievement in the school. It'll contain requirements, requested variance to standards, as well as pauses to other things in order to engage in this work, and will contain approval of stakeholders, what their outcomes are going to be for their students, things like culture and climate, instructional components, even like master schedules of 90-minute literacy blocks, but very particular components that need to be in there. And part of this document that we are working on designing will include a checklist of items that need to be evaluated by the OPI accreditation team and state superintendent to ensure that this innovation plan meets all of the requirements and recommendations prior to this plan coming in front of the board for BPE approval. A rubric will be designed to evaluate the innovation plan, which will include the variance to standards components, the best practice approach for instruction, the district support plans, and how the innovation plan will be implemented and supported by the school staff, how it will involve the community, the local school board, and that we are really intending for this plan to be very different from an accreditation corrective plan, different from what we've done with an ISEP, like the Integrated Strategic Action Plan. We understand an ISEP has goals, right? That's our part of that. An ISEP would be a component of an overall innovation plan. I make this a parallel much similar to what you guys have done with like charter schools of saying, we have a school that has some serious need to get things right and to make some immediate corrections and changes. What are you proposing to do? What's that overall going to look like? And so the innovation plan will focus on new ideas for improvement, while the school improvement plan or corrective plan is an incremental roadmap detailing steps to address academic achievement. So be very different is what the team is considering. So questions on that phase before I go to the next part?
Member Schmidt.
I have a quick question to clarify. So when you're analyzing the system, are you looking beyond the school system to the community and the culture and the economics? When I look at this stuff, I'm assuming you will, but I wanted to see if my assumption is correct.
Yes, Chair Rasmussen, Board Member Schmidt, absolutely. Yes. So I think part of the system analysis is to really get an idea of the assets of a community that can be leveraged You know, I can give some like small examples, but if we really want to start to look at ensuring that every high school student is leaving with college and career readiness opportunities, like what's in a community to support that? What are some of those different avenues that are within that community that can be utilized, and really recognizing that the school is at the heart of the community. And so how do we really kind of take a look at that? So while we won't be looking at, are we changing like economic levels, we'll be looking at data points that are influencing the outcomes that we're getting and thinking about how that is leading to the changes of what we need to do to kind of address it in a way that will be more comprehensive, not just these fix this, improve this one little item, like improve number of kids that are, you know, in industrial recognized credentials. Well, if that's your goal, how are you actually going to do that as it's situated within your community? And what are the other outside resources that might need to come in as well?
Superintendent Headland. Good
Thank
morning.
you. Thank you, Chair Tharp and Chair Quinlan. I would just like to add some of the support systems we've talked about, or some of the different providers that we've taken a look at, for example, do work where they have, there's examples of this being done before, where they come into a community and do a much deeper dive and make sure that the community is involved in all aspects, everyone that you can get in attendance and get involved. One of the things that was astonishing to me was the attendance that we had from tribal representatives and others in these meetings, and they seem all in and ready to go for their communities. So I think really including them in every aspect of the plan, and even going into the, excuse me, even diving into their budget and how their budget is going to align to this work, and being really open and transparent with the community about how they're aligning the priorities in these plans with their fundings, and how the OPI will be involved in directing that work, as well as utilizing these third parties to kind of take that lead, so that it's not coming down as compliance, but they're getting to select this person that's going to help them through this process, and really look at every aspect of how the school district is operating to make sure everyone's on the same page. Because the other thing we don't want to have happen is for the leadership team to be working with school improvement and accreditation and others and feel really good about a plan, and then take it before the board and then have that budget not be adopted, or those kinds of components. So understanding that we really need everyone's buy-in and everyone to agree on these priorities, and make sure that means that we're all in, our funding is going towards these, our, you know, we're going to support these important instructional changes and these schedule changes, the budget changes, all of the different components. So we've talked to some providers that offer this very comprehensive, intensive service that can work alongside our teams. And like we talked about, we understand that we need to build capacity and sustainability. And so that's where we would have, make sure we have lines of communication and long-term buy-in from leaders and teachers that have been there long-term, plan, you know, to be there long-term, as well as our staff that's going to make sure that communication is happening. We really talked a lot about the need for the frequent communication. That's been a struggle in the past, not being able to get a hold of people to make sure these things are happening, having team members show up to support schools and finding out the school was closed that day, or different things like that. So making sure that we don't have those kinds of instances happen going forward.
Thank you. I think we have a discussion about resources that will be ahead of us, but Julie, why don't you continue with all 4 phases here? We'll get through that and then go from there.
There's a second component of the implementation phase beyond just the planning, which is progress monitoring. We feel that's equally as important as that as you're beginning to implement something, you really got to have those immediate wins, and you've got to pivot if something needs to be addressed in real time rather than waiting for a full year to happen, right? That we're really thinking about how do we then do some progress monitoring? How do we design progress monitoring tools to align with the innovation plan implementation? How do we these tools focus on several key performance indicators to evaluate progress like student academic growth, proficiency and progression, reducing significant reading deficiency rates in K-3, increasing the percentage of student proficiency on our testlets and post-secondary and workforce readiness and things like attendance and engagement. And so, Lisa, this is the piece that I think you were kind of alluding to a little bit, which is being sure that we're, as we're not just like planning out what the goals, what are those critical indicators that we need to be looking at, and how are we monitoring them ongoing throughout the entire process? The tool should enable a school to engage in a collaborative, data-driven system to determine if the school identified for intensive assistance is meeting the academic performance gaps and implementation benchmarks that they've outlined. And so the progress monitoring tools and guidance can kind of include those benchmark reflection points, maybe even some site visits by third-party entities, and really helping give that full view of how it's going, ensuring that that even like the site visits of the third-party entity or OPI staff that conduct these visits can observe the practices and interactions and really kind of be reflective of what they need to do to be sure that they're continuously improving throughout the entire process. So that was a piece that we were kind of really thinking about there, of how that would kind of lay out. And then, as we had mentioned, we really feel that it's going to be important to put out an RFI to think about third-party entities and the resources that are going to need for this full process to take hold. And so then the team, the task force really had talked a lot about being sure that the exit criteria of what we're looking at is really set out from the very beginning so that the goalposts are marked, they don't move. We clearly understand what the exit criteria are and that what they are based on, and that there are some things that are non-negotiable. Our students being able to read, our students being able to graduate, and our schools being safe. Like those pieces of those are critical components, and those are essential. They talked a lot about that this process would be at a maximum of 3 years before a decision would be made about if the school would exit intensive assistance or if it would be up for consideration for being non-accredited in front of the board. And so there was this long conversation and a lot around that particular piece of saying we do have to set a timeline of when that decision would come and what that would look like so that it's really clear that we're moving and planning and implementing and monitoring over a time frame with an expectation of a decision to be made at some point so that they can backwards map from that. So that was a big part of that conversation. And you can see on the timeline that is in the packet kind of the recommendation of how these phases would happen towards that 3-year mark. I want you to also note that the team talked a lot about that even if the school met, right, and exits intensive assistance after the 3 years, that there still would continue to need to be a sustainability phase for at least a year afterwards, not just immediately pull out the support. So I just want to mention that, by the way. So we would be looking at the schools right now that are in deficient status have to complete the accreditation process for the school year right now at the end of February. It's due February 27th. The internal team will be reviewing that. If those schools
ratings will come in front of you of how they did this year in the accreditation process in May. If in May we have any school that is deficient a second year in a row, then the intensive assistance process would begin for them. And so that would happen. Yes.
I'm going to stop you and
Yeah.
I kind of look to the board chair and our executive director. I know we're behind on time and I am going to recommend that we refer this document to the accreditation committee for at least a couple of looks at this before the March meeting. Should we have her go through a high level timeline review or do we want to just go to, I think there's important questions about resources. So we need a little bit of time. Okay. So maybe 5 minutes on the timeline and we'll get to some other questions.
Thank you. So step one, that would be May, when a school would be determined if they'd begin this process. Step two would be a third-party entity supports the school in conducting a system analysis, and they begin that. And they have that piece would, the school would then bring that information and that to the board so we could hear about what the system analysis determined in November. Then step three, they would be engaging in that planning and really be bring that forward in March to be finalized and to be talked about. If it's approved, then they could go forward with that plan in March. And if not, then what recommendations would be made of what changes they need to make so that it could come back and be ready. And then step four, the school would submit their assurance standards and components for the accreditation review. And the OPI would report those assurances and then move forward. So they would begin then implementing. So it would literally take almost a full year to begin implementing system analysis, planning, and those approval processes before they actually begin. And then they would be in front of the board on an ongoing basis over those 3 years in November and March of their implementation years to report on progress and how it's going. And then they would be submitting at the end of those years how they're doing at the end of the 3 years, if you will. And then there would be a decision as to how they were doing at the end of those 3 years for whether they would continue to be accredited or not. So it's just kind of thinking about a full year of almost planning before launch of implementation. And then those years of implementation in year 2 and 3 coming forward with progress monitoring reports to the board.
So Julie, this is a report of the recommendations of a task force. What are you, who's the audience for what you want to prepare for March? And I mean, are we actually needing to get literally a procedural guidance done for March, or what's the product we need to come up with?
So Board Member Rasmussen, I think we will be working internally at the OPI with a small group to flesh all of this out even in more detail. I think it'd be good to meet with your accreditation subcommittee to bring that forward, gather any feedback with the idea that we would come back to this piece with it being completely fleshed out, the timeline, you know, sitting how we want it to sit with recommendation to you guys to approve the process in March. So that when May happens, if any schools end up in this situation, we're ready to begin.
I have one other question. Can you address Superintendent Hedlund and presenters? Could you address what resources OPI has to bring to the table here on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Chair Quinlan, we are prepared to put our school improvement team, our Native American well, as you know, we've combined our units, but our Native American Student Achievement Specialists together, as well as potentially we have a position or two that we have been holding on to that we may be able to add an additional coach or two to directly focus on these schools. So one of the things we want to be very thoughtful about is who we have working with these schools. If we already have someone in place that they're calling regularly, that they're comfortable with, that has that buy-in, or if we're going to utilize someone within the community that has the skill set or that is nearby, or maybe if they're working with someone from SAM or something like that, that they have a strong connection to. So there's different ways to look at it, but we definitely have resources. And then, like we said, with these schools, if they're comprehensive, for example, or potentially even rigorous action, we do have some authority to make sure that we have communication with them and we can direct the funding be utilized in certain ways. So there may be components, just like when a school is on the literacy grant, you need to utilize your funds for X, Y, and Z. And you get to, have a voice in that. And that helps obviously with the buy-in and everything, but that there is direction to needing to have these components in place, including those instructional coaches, to make sure that the learning continues, even if the administrator is dealing with a crisis, or the data team meetings and the MTSS work is continuing, even if leadership is unavailable to, be involved in that at that time. So making sure that we still have the capacity within those districts to focus on the plan. So we've talked about different ways of being able to do that. We're definitely all in and want to provide as much support and resources to making this successful as we can.
And specifically, what about the third party facilitator that might be brought in? Is OPI able to help support that, or would there be an expectation the school district would, or how does that work?
We talked about the school district supporting that with their funding, their additional funding that they receive, but also we are asking, we have a meeting coming up with our comprehensive center, which is Ed Northwest right now, and we have asked for this to be a top priority. They did facilitate the meeting, so we have an allotted amount of funds to utilize with our comprehensive center, and that comes, in the form of facilitation, actual in-person support, those different components. We know that they have a strong background in working in school improvement in tribal communities. And so we have made that one of our top priorities for them to focus on and for our resources from the comp center to go to as well. So it could be it could be an employee from the comp center that is here in Montana, or different components such as that. So that's another, thank you for asking that. I had missed that part. So that will be another huge component. We plan to continue to work very closely with Ed Northwest based on their best practices and what they've seen work in other communities that they have been working with similar demographics.
Any questions or comments from board members? Board Member Slinger.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. Okay, and thanks to the committee for the hard work. As I was reading this and preparing for this meeting, the thing I kept coming back to was, I think that taking that first year, the assessment and all that is absolutely pivotal and critical. I think the old parable, building the house on not on sand, right? And to me, I think that is really, really intelligent and really well thought out. And I just want to thank you and thank the committee on that, because I think once you have that done, you can start building from that foundation, all the information that everyone has and is agreed on, and actually start making a change. Because we all know, sitting here, the schools that we see on this are consistently the same schools. Something has to change. And that's where it has to change, at the foundational level first. Then we can help them get to another place. So thank you for that. I do just think from the whole committee and everyone's working on this, I just think that's so critical and pivotal. And I'm so happy to see that. in such an intensive way for those communities, because it's not easy work, and it's not work that they would naturally do. But for lack of a better term, forcing them to do it, the work on building on the process, I think is an integral part of the whole plan. So thank you.
Board Member Neeskens.
I'm certain you're tracking this the same way the Board of Public Ed is in regards to leadership, constant leadership changes in these districts. It was so apparent earlier in the year that was part of the reason the districts were kind of in the state they were in, is there's this constant turnover of administrators. I'm curious what the discussion you've had around that in regards to the timeline and also the challenges. And then in addition, what role those local school boards have kind of in this plan, because I think the only people that were able to give us a historical perspective were the board members, because they had a term that was more lengthy than the superintendents, which were changing out every year. So just kind of what discussions have happened in regards to that.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of discussion. That's why that piece up front of going in and getting the community to really understand what this process is and the outcomes that can come from it. So that there's all community buy-in, and that has to include the local school board, because there was a conversation about what we don't want to see is like a leader and a school board not on the same page and working together, because either of those could change. Potentially somebody could be reelected during the time frame that someone might be a school might be in intensive assistance, or there could be a change in leadership. And so both of those pieces were like, it can't just be on the leader in and of itself. It has to be the whole system in agreement as to what the plan is. But the second piece was around how critical it is going to be to have some of the resources that the superintendent was talking about, so that there is some leadership support for that leader who's going through that. Right? That they have that coaching and that support as they're navigating this, the conversations they have with their board. What does it look like? How do you, structure some of this, and how critical that third party entity is going to be? So we talked about that support network is different from the third party entity and may actually be different from a leadership coach that might need to be there. And so we think it's going to be really important that the school board also and the leader understand that they've got to support the entire system through it, and how important it is for them to be together on that. So there were a lot of conversations about multiple layers, if you will, board member Neeskens, around what might need to happen.
Any other board member comments or questions? Board member or Superintendent Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chair Quinlan. I just want to add, I don't know if this was already said, so I apologize, but that we talked a lot about the clerk being involved as well, or making sure that they have support, because we have found that our school improvement specialists often end up helping with administrative duties, trying to make sure that these schools are getting their paperwork turned in on time. And so, yeah, really whole systematic. And so that's where we've been having conversations with Sam and Masbo and all of our different groups to see how everyone's going to support and come to the table. I think it was an incredible group to have together. The knowledge in that room was amazing. And we made it very clear that we're all in and we need all hands on deck, including support from the Board of Public Ed. So I think, really system-wide approach, obviously, to make this work. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, this is an informational item. I think it makes sense to refer this to the accreditation committee and work on a document that can come to the board in March.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. And and thank you to the OPI. This is something we've been talking about for some time, and just like the kind of the theme of the day, we're doing something different than has ever been done before, and actually providing some real assistance and some real support for these schools. So thank you for your efforts in this area. And the accreditation committee will follow up, and we continue this discussion at our next meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Our next three items are under the executive committee. And so item number 28, we have two separate action items here on the MSDB superintendent contract. Board members, last year, going into our current year, many of the teachers and the staff at the MSDB received raises in conjunction with the STARS Act and recognizing the increased funding that was available, and salaries increased, but they did not increase for our superintendent. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we increase Paul's 2025-26 contract by the sum of $6,000. We have a second by Board Member Schmidt. Board member discussion.
I think based on Mr. Chair, I think based on the strong kudos and really exceptional performance that we've seen from Paul, I think he's well deserving of a significant raise, and I'm pleased to vote for it.
Thank you. Any other board member comment? Is there any public comment? Any public comment online? All those in favor of granting Paul the salary increase for the 25-26 school year of $6,000 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The second action item is action on the future contract, and what we started doing a few years ago was commensurate with what many other superintendents across the state have, a 3-year rolling contract. And I believe Board Member Schmidt, do you have a motion that you would like to make regarding Paul's contract for the future?
I move to approve the 2026 MSDB superintendent contract.
And do you have, is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Dr. Neeskens. In your package, you have the information. What this basically is again, adds another year, and it's that 3-year rolling contract as we've discussed. Any further board member discussion? Dr. Neeskens.
This is, we'll need our legal counsel to walk us through this, but there's a few anomalies just in the language of the contract that I want to bring to our attention. So on item 10, for instance, it mentions retirement, death, and disability, and then there's no language regarding disability actually in that clause. Not sure if we just want to remove the word disability from the title or actually include language there.
I don't know that our current legal counsel has a chance to review this contract. Our previous one did review this.
Okay, so I'll just bring up my concerns and then we can figure out how to work with them. The other thing that is noticeably missing is a mention of any benefits whatsoever, and I like.
Okay, thank you for the question. Paul is in a unique position in that he is our superintendent, but he is also head of a state agency and a state employee. And so his benefits package is governed by his position
And
as a
I
state
just simply
employee.
think the contract needs to actually state that, just for his protection, yes. And then also I would assume, and this is where it gets a little murky for me because of his state status, but there is a law in the books that says if we do not evaluate and offer him a contract by February 1st and the expiring year of the contract, that they like superintendents in other districts automatically get their job back, regardless of if we want to actually change their contract status or not. Because of his unique status as a state employee, I'm not sure how that law does or does not apply. Any thoughts?
That is an excellent question. Mr. Batterman, I don't want to put you on the spot. Is this something you'd like to get back to us on? Okay. That's a very good question. We all recognize the very unique position he is in, as he has a foot in both worlds there. And any
I think the remedy would just be like in section 6 to say we would do the evaluation by February 1st if that law does apply.
Yes, perhaps we should ask our legal counsel to do a little bit deeper dive then into this unique combination of positions and figure out where we do need to include the components of his state and where we do not, and where the superintendent laws follow in compared to his state employee contract and all of that. But they're very good points. I'd expect somebody with JD after their name would come up with things like this. Thank you, Hannah. Good point. Any other board member discussion on the contract?
So, Mr. Chair, what does that set of questions do in terms of our ability to adopt the contract?
I would imagine we adopt the contract and then pending legal advice, make any edits in the future.
I don't know that it's going to be a substantive change to the employment status. It would just be clarifying the terms and conditions of that employment. And as Board Member Neeskens points out, it's either going to be governed by the Title 20 or the provisions regarding state employment. But I think statements regarding benefits, vacation, licensure, and so forth, I think are probably important add-ons. You may also wish to consider some sort of statement regarding training opportunities, memberships in professional associations. Some of the other language that I think is customary to superintendent positions generally that would apply to the school as well.
And you referred to substantive changes. Looks from the sounds of it, anything that we would add would be seeking to strengthen his contract in his eyes and further clarify our obligation to him as well.
I think clarify the terms and conditions of employment, but in my opinion, certainly the contract that's been in place for how many years certainly establishes the employment relationship adequately, that you could approve it conditional on reconciliation of any necessary statutory correction.
Very good, very good. Any other board member discussion? Very good points. Thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Neeskens. That's good information for us to clarify in here. Any other board discussion? Is there any public comment? Any public comment online? Okay, the motion is to approve the 26 contract as presented in your board packet, noting that it will be subject to review from the attorney and potential additions, non-substantive changes, but clarifications coming up at a future board meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Item number 29, action on the creation of the Seal of Civics Literacy. We talked about this yesterday, and we are now ready to proceed with action. Board Member Maxwell.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I move to approve the creation of the Seal of Civics Literacy.
For the motion, is there a second? Seconded by Board Member Quinlan. Board member discussion. Any public comment? Please.
Hi, thank you, Chair Tharp and board members. My name is Julia Gustafson, Gustafson. I'm here today with the Friends of the Montana Constitution. I'm their coordinator. We are a statewide nonpartisan nonprofit with a three-part mission. One, to inspire appreciation of our state constitution. Two, to celebrate the legacy of our 1972 Constitutional Convention. And three, to support civic education at all levels, specifically about our Constitution, but broadly as well. So I'm here today to express our support for the Seal of Civics Literacy. We're very excited about this project. We think this will be a great tool to encourage civic engagement in our youth. And I'm also here to offer our support of the creation and ask to be, if we can be involved in the final application and some of the language that is used. We, the Friends of the Montana Constitution, that it's unique to be a citizen of our state. Our state constitution encourages us to be more active civic participants than other states. Obviously, in things like this, giving public comment is unique. We also have unique opportunities, like the chance to review our form of government, at the local level every 10 years and at the state level every 20 years. And so, we want our students to be ready to use their civic muscles and practice, be responsible in their participation in public life. So what I'm trying to say is that we want to see a little bit more robust examples of how of civic examples to be specific on some of the volunteer opportunities more in that civic section. For example, give public comment at a meeting like this, having students practice would be great. And so we have some resources that we'd love to share. One is from one of our partners, a democracy scavenger hunt. It's a tool created for high school students to do these kind of things, like attend a school board meeting, read a newspaper front to back if they can find it in physical form, or maybe online. And so that is a tool that's already out there. I know that the Montana Farmers Union is using it with some of their school programs, and the Democracy Project is using it in school libraries. So there's tools out there, and we would love to share those tools. So I think that, and so again, I'll just say that we like this Montana Challenge piece, that it could be unique for our state, and we would love to be involved and support the work. Thank you for allowing my comment.
I don't think this board necessarily wants to get too deep into the weeds with all of this, and are just generally very supportive of it. And so I encourage you to continue discussion with the OPI and with Chris Averill and McCall, and I'm sure we can work something out there. Thank you so much. Any other public comment? Any public comment online? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of creation of the Seal of Civics Literacy signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. By the way, we got a word from Paul. He expressed he's where is that? Is that wrestling? And so I don't believe he's actually wrestling today, but he's just a spectator today. But he expresses his appreciation, and so we definitely appreciate all of his work. All right, item number 30. You've been doing this a little bit longer than me, but it's over 2 decades ago when I first got to know Madeline and her role with the OPI, and she was has always been a staple in Montana education, and always in one role or another. And as we were discussing last night, trying to figure out what's next, because she is not going to go away. She's just not going to be necessarily on this board any longer. But on behalf of this board, and I'm sure others are going to speak as well, but me personally, in my role as a school administrator and all of the different capacities and things over the years, I want to express the deepest appreciation from me, the Board of Public Education, the school administrators and students and teachers across the state, and thank you so much for your many, many years of service to the education of Montana students. And on behalf of the Board of Public Education, we have a gift for you.
It's been a total honor to serve on Board of Public Ed, and I'll make this short or I'll lose it, but it's been an honor, and it's been a great way to sort of finish my career in K-12 education. I started at the legislature working in school funding. I worked for the Legislative Fiscal Division, spent 6 years there trying to figure out all the revenue sources for public schools, and drawn into the school funding lawsuits at that time. So then 27 years at the Office of Public Instruction, and serving on the Board of Public Ed has just been a great way to culminate my career. I jokingly say that I used to think serving on the board would have its moments of being mind-numbingly dull, because I have sat in the audience many times. But everything's been interesting to me about serving on the board. I really appreciate the dedication of all the board members that I've served with. It's amazing that Montana's Board of Public Ed operates as a volunteer board and how much we get done. And I'm most proud of the flexibility that I've seen us bring forward in the last 7 years and the innovation. I'm thrilled about early literacy and numeracy coming on. And the good work I think we did while maintaining quality standards for education licensure, I think, and that's bearing fruit for us. So anyway, it's been great. I really enjoyed it. And I do want to give a special shout out to McCall. I think she's been an amazing team builder for the board. Change moves at the speed of trust. And I think you've really built us all together, and I appreciate that. The agility that this board's needed to have to implement all the things that the legislature has perhaps dumped on us, but at least assigned to us because they trusted us and they believed that we could make things happen, and we have. So I appreciate that, all the work for charter schools. I always had my doubts about charter schools, but when I was able to see the real enthusiasm that experienced educators would bring before the board, like, we get to try something new, I've really become a believer in the charter school process for the public schools. So anyway, I want to say thank you, and I wish you all the best. And I'm not going to disappear, so I've told people, you know, if there's some opportunities, I might consider it. So for committee work or something like that. But thank you. I appreciate it. And I will open this. Oh, and actually, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the folks at the Office of Public Instruction. And I'm going to single out Julie Mergel because you are just the you are the consistent person in my 7 years of working on the board that's really carried the important work of the office in your relationship with the board. And I totally appreciate that. So thank you all.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just comment. I don't know how we ended up sitting next to each other. But what? Huge mistake. I just want to say how really great it's been to be able to work with you, you know, more closely than we did when you were at OPI. I've enjoyed sitting next to you. I think that, you know, we spurred each other on, and I want to thank you for spurring me on. I just really appreciate it. I'm going to miss you dreadfully. And I don't know who's going to be your seatmate. Yeah, I'm going to be my seatmate next, but you have huge shoes to fill. I wish you well, and I will miss you and your expertise. Thank you a lot.
Goal is to make you cry.
I've known Madeline significantly less time than many of you, but we actually met before my time on the Board of Public Ed. We were at a event in Bozeman about systems of public education. And I, at one point, was grouped with Madeline for discussion. And I just remember being very impressed and inspired by how thoughtful and reflective you are, and that nothing is treated as simple, or the complexity is appreciated, and that you always give thought to kind of how it could affect every facet of the system. And I hope to carry that forward in my own role on the board, is to be deeply thoughtful. So thank you so much for being an inspiration to me and for your leadership on this board in that manner. Thank you.
Madeline, I just want to say thank you for your many years of service to education in Montana. Your work is phenomenal. Your integrity is top notch, and I appreciate everything you've done and having had the opportunity to serve with you.
So, Madeline, I love you. I love you. I absolutely love you. I'm going to miss you so much. I'm not going to miss you sitting next to Renee because you guys talk. But, but honestly, you're so thoughtful. You have just encyclopedic knowledge of the OPI and of the systems. And say, I learn as much in meetings from you as I do from presentations and things, just because you have this wonderful knowledge but you bring it in such a caring, servant, inquisitive leadership model. I mean, you've been so wonderful. Oh, so wonderful to work with. I'm serious. I'm going to miss you terribly. So, and I know you're not going to miss me, but I don't mind that. But so you don't forget me, at least, I have also come bearing gifts. So I'm worried about you, right? As you had so I want you to stay warm. So I got a little hat for you. I have also a nice little MCC little sweater that you can wear. There's pockets for your crafting and stuff. And then also an MCC scarf. So I just want you to stay warm and take care of yourself. And then at least be reminded of your annoying friend from Eastern Montana.
So just to delay you opening the box, I would like to second everything that Hannah said also as far as leave an example for us newbies on the board to follow. But I also would like to speak about you personally. So coming on the board was exciting, but also really stressful because there are incredibly intelligent people around this table. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to add anything. They're gonna think, why did he pick her? But I think the first thing that amazed me was the minute I met you, you acted like you'd been my best friend for my whole life. You wanted to know about my family and what was going on in my school. And you made this place feel like home when I didn't even know anybody's true first name. You were generous with me when I fumbled on calling people chair and all those things. But I really hope that you know that example of welcoming people with just unbelievable abundance and loving arms is something that we will carry on with all of our new people because you made us a family.
So as board member Slinger is handing out his wonderful gifts, the thing that went through my mind was, are they made of wool? Because the first thing Madeline ever said to me was, oh, you raise sheep and I like to knit. And to reiterate what board member Maxwell was saying is you made me feel very well. You were searching for things that were interesting to me, and I really appreciate that. And so thank you. And thank you for the context that you offer in all of our meetings and issues. It's been huge for me. So I appreciate that.
While you're opening your box, I just want to let you know that your words will continue on in your guidance. And both Dr. Slinger and I were writing down quotes with the proper citation to it. And this will get into our work as well as you continue to influence us in the future. Change moves at the speed of trust. Properly cited MQ 2026. As quoted by
They are
MQ.
now.
They are now, yes. McCall, our future agenda items and a preview of our Ronan meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you just heard, we will be in Ronan, March 19th and 20th. You can see on your agenda that we have lots of the sort of usual items. We will have quite a few other items. I just can't think off the top of my head right now, frankly. But we will get that agenda out to you typically a week in advance as we do. And if you have any requests while we're in Ronan, please let me know early. We will be doing strategic planning like we are today. Just do keep that in mind that each of our meetings will have a component to it like we are going to be doing today after this. So Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. And as part of that, while we were taking care of things this morning, I got confirmation that on my way to Ronan, I will be teaching QPR and mental health supports at Augusta Schools on that Wednesday afternoon on my way to centrally located Ronan, which is just across the river from North Dakota, where I'll start that day. So it continues to emphasize the importance of the mental health challenges that are faced by so many in our schools, and there's so many issues across the state. Lots of times I say I'm blessed to be able to do what I get to do now, and that means not being in schools on a daily basis, which is, such a challenge to our current administrators. So many of the things that they're facing. Just a quick snippet across the state. Park City on remote learning due to their facilities. I saw Hardin had to close yesterday due to unsafe air quality due to a wildfire. Of course, we know the tragedy that happened in Billings earlier this week, and there's just so many challenges across the state. And which is I pray that our work at this board level is supportive of all of our schools and our administrators, and most importantly, our students whom we work for. One final item before adjournment. Do we have any public comment on anything not on our agenda? Any public comment online? Seeing none, for the record, we will be adjourning this meeting, but we will be engaging in strategic planning. There'll be no actions taken. This will be a facilitated strategic planning session conducted by our friends and partners at NASB, and that will commence at about 12 o'clock, and that'll go for about 2 hours in here. But we will be shutting down the Zoom and YouTube feed during that time, correct?
Correct.
Yep, and so we will be adjourning, but again, we'd just be looking forward to an opportunity to engage in strategic planning and every chance that we can get to squeeze out any more knowledge out of Madeline over the next couple of hours before she leaves with her bowl. So with that, the January 2026 meeting of the Montana Board of Public Education will stand adjourned.